Hola, buenas tardes. Somos los resistentes.
Exacto, gracias.
3 días de mucho trabajo, de muchos casos, de muchas ideas, de muchos cambios de paradigmas y de parámetros. Y ahora estamos muy contentos de tener a Giselle Arce con nosotros, porque también va a ser otro giro para pensar, porque Giselle trabaja mucho sobre arte africano, arte cubano, entonces eso también nos da como otro tipo de perspectiva y de líneas de pensamiento que no necesariamente tienen que estar enmarcadas en el caso mexicano o en el caso latinoamericano nada más, ¿no? Bueno, Giselle es profesora investigadora de la UAM Xochimilco, en la Ciudad de México, estudió su doctorado y su maestría en estudios de Asia y África con especialidad de arte africano en el Colmex, hizo su licenciatura en la Universidad de La Habana y ha sido profesora de Teoría de la Cultura Artística y Arte Africano en la Facultad de las Artes y Letras de la Universidad de La Habana, y tiene un montón de publicaciones que pueden buscar en línea, que yo ya voy a buscar porque me interesa muchísimo toda una serie de reflexiones que me estaba contando sobre Sudáfrica, pero por ejemplo en relación a películas como District 9 o Disgrace, ¿no? Y que esto va a ser muy interesante para poder conectar también al final con Rachel, que va a trabajar sobre el caso Palestina, pero también desde una perspectiva que abra en los estudios de África. Bienvenida y muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Helena, muchas gracias a todos por estar acá a esta hora, es tremendo lo que nos ha pasado. Le agradezco muchísimo al comité de selección, a los colegas y amigos del instituto y a todos los que nos acompañan, acá también en la Secretaría de Cultura de Guadalajara. Bueno, efectivamente voy a dar como un giro hacia… Déjame ver porque tengo el impreso acá y el micrófono, son muchas cosas a tomar en cuenta a esta hora de la tarde sin café expreso. Pero bueno, el título de mi ponencia: Las paradojas de la Revolución, insularidades políticas, prácticas visuales y procesos de racialización en Cuba. A ver, déjame entender esto. Acá. Bueno, entre 1954 y 1956, Roland Barthes publicó una serie de textos que después fueron recopilados en su libro Mitologías. Allí, cuando Barthes toma como ejemplo a la portada de la revista Paris Match, en la cual aparece un joven africano vestido con el uniforme francés, saludando a la bandera francesa, hace mucho más que intentar explicar su noción de mito y sus primeras formulaciones críticas sobre las relaciones entre signo, significante y significado. En palabras de Barthes, estoy en la peluquería, me ofrecen un número de Paris Match. En la portada, un joven negro vestido con un uniforme francés hace la venia con los ojos levantados, fijo sin duda en los pliegues de la bandera tricolor. Tal el sentido de la imagen. Sin embargo, ingenuo o no, percibo correctamente lo que me significa: que Francia es un gran imperio, que todos sus hijos, sin distinción de color, sirven fielmente bajo su bandera, y que no hay mejor respuesta a los detractores de un pretendido colonialismo que el celo de ese negro en servir a sus pretendidos opresores. Me encuentro una vez más ante un sistema semiológico amplificado. Existe un significante formado a su vez previamente de un sistema. Un soldado negro hace la venia. Hay un significado, en este caso una mezcla intencional de francicidad y militaridad. Y finalmente, una presencia del significado a través del significante. Fin de la cita. La teoría semiológica que emergió con ese análisis, aunque restrictiva y todavía atrapada en los vicios o en las antípodas de una concepción estructuralista, paradójicamente convirtió a la imagen en un campo de interrogaciones e interrelaciones que desbordaba la propia esterilidad de aquella primera inflexión barthiana. Barthes, aún sin quererlo, certificó en esa episteme visual la imposibilidad de la lisura de la imagen. La potencia de esa portada de Paris Match, su capacidad para producir significaciones inestables, aquello que Barthes conceptualizaría después en un distanciamiento crítico de sus mitologías como el sentido obtuso, el sobreañadido, el que viene a ser como una especie de suplemento que el intelecto no llega a asimilar, testarudo, huidizo, resbaladizo, se convierte en el epicentro de una discusión que toma al lenguaje y a las fisuras de su gramática como un locus desde donde articular y problematizar relaciones sociales, pero sobre todo en un lugar donde los significados siempre permanecerían como un proceso en disputa. Entonces, la experiencia de mirar, irrumpir e interpelar la imagen del africano, saludando a la bandera francesa, supone un acto más complejo y una yuxtaposición de tiempos, de memorias, de relatos históricos, de relaciones de poder. Quizás Frank Fanon, en la lógica de una crítica al colonialismo, se preguntaría ante esa imagen por la condición existencial de ese sujeto colonial racializado, por las contradicciones que habitaban los escenarios políticos sociales de los cuales emergía y las huellas de la violencia colonial en la constitución misma del sujeto colonizado. Y siguiendo esa genealogía crítica, pero en las claves de la teoría postcolonial, Homi Bhabha discutiría ante aquel gesto de sujeción colonial la problemática del mimetismo, la mimicry, que según su propia conceptualización es una de las estrategias más elusivas y eficaces del poder y del colonialismo colonial. Pero para Bhabha, el mimetismo opera al unísono como un compromiso ambivalente e irónico. Es lo parecido y la amenaza, el exceso y su diferencia. En este sentido, Bhabha argumenta que el mimetismo colonial es el deseo de un otro reformado, reconocible como sujeto de una diferencia que es casi lo mismo, pero no exactamente. Es entonces el signo de una doble articulación, una compleja estrategia de reforma, regulación y disciplina que se apropia del otro cuando éste visualiza el poder. El mimetismo, no obstante, es también el signo de lo inapropiado, una diferencia u obstinación que cohesiona la función estratégica dominante del poder colonial, intensifica la vigilancia y proyecta una amenaza inmanente tanto sobre el saber normalizado como sobre los poderes disciplinarios. Siguiendo esas directrices de Bhabha, la imagen del africano vestido de soldado francés saludando a la bandera francesa deja de ser únicamente la imagen de la francesidad, la construcción visual de la obediencia incuestionable a ese otro que domina o la victoria anunciada de la empresa colonizadora. Las significaciones estallan quebrando la bidimensionalidad, a modo de metáfora, de los procesos de construcción de sentido y significación de esta imagen fotográfica. Bhabha, en su discusión sobre el mimetismo y en contrapunto con lo que aquí hemos planteado en torno a Barthes, permite sumergir al signo en la complejidad de los relatos históricos que le son concomitantes y producir otro saber de sus normas, así como también visibilizar los procesos de negociación que se disputan en el acto mismo en el que el otro, siempre ambivalente, emerge como el significante de la diferencia colonial. La poderosa imagen de la portada de Paris Match y las discusiones que sobre sus significaciones podrían suscitarse me permiten en esta ponencia introducir el trabajo de un realizador cubano que, sin proponérselo en términos teóricos, ha hecho de la relación signo, mímesis, raza el eje analítico y crítico de una zona relevante de sus propuestas audiovisuales. Nicolás Guillén Landrian, no Nicolás Guillén el poeta, sino su sobrino proscrito, desde la especificidad de sus medios audiovisuales y la complejidad de su tiempo histórico, está produciendo en Cuba en los años 60 y 70 del siglo XX, ha indagado en las tesituras de los conflictos raciales que la retórica del discurso oficial de la Revolución cubana sepultó en zonas de silencio. Las categorías que rigen la vida política de la mayor de las islas del Caribe gravitan todavía hoy en torno a la fuerza simbólica de la Revolución cubana de 1959. Las narrativas y las conceptualizaciones que configuran el corpus analítico sobre este hecho histórico reifican sistemáticamente los imaginarios de un Estado-nación con un carácter excepcional en pleno centro del territorio caribe. intentar producir una conjunción entre las prácticas audiovisuales, sus dimensiones políticas y los relatos de la posrevolución en Cuba supone el desafío de construir perspectivas críticas con respecto a una historiografía que enfatiza y exacerba la gesta revolucionaria del 59 como el punto de ruptura absoluta con nuestro pasado colonial. Esos actos fundantes, y la historia provee innumerables ejemplos, hacen de la escritura de sus memorias y de sus operaciones archivísticas una práctica del borramiento, una política de la higienización que precisa de emborronar, esconder, silenciar sus zonas de tensión, sus conflictos y, por supuesto, los sujetos en disciplinamiento. La opacidad de este régimen de narración no admite fisuras ni contingencias que empañen la linealidad y, por paradójico que parezca, la nitidez con la que anhela proyectar sus propuestas discursivas. El Estado, las interrogantes entonces se imponen. ¿Cómo la experiencia colonial sigue constituyendo el ámbito de significaciones que modulan el presente? ¿Cómo el Estado-nación, o por lo menos las prácticas de estatalidad en Cuba, gestionan las cartografías de la diferencia y articulan un campo de legitimación que compromete prácticas simbólicas, lenguajes y saberes disciplinares en torno a las figuraciones políticas del ser nacional? Cómo las alteridades históricas hacen uso también de ese amplio archivo producido por el Estado-Nación para sobreescribir e interpelar la eficacia de su autoridad. Son estas precisamente algunas de las preguntas centrales de la crítica poscolonial que retomaremos en esta presentación para estudiar las prácticas audiovisuales de autores proscritos por las normativas de las políticas culturales y los aparatos de censura de la Revolución cubana. Mecanismos que intentaban clausurar la discusión en torno a la pervivencia del pasado en el tiempo presente o futuro de la nación, o de cualquier otra problemática que no fueran los logros y las conquistas del sistema revolucionario emergente. La fuerza y la potencia simbólica con la que las prácticas del campo artístico en Cuba han asumido el debate sobre los problemas raciales desestabilizan o por lo menos enturbian el sistema ideológico racial sobre el que se ha estructurado la genealogía del Estado-nación moderno en la isla. Las fantasías del proyecto nacional de refundar un sujeto político revolucionario y homogéneo pasaban por el disciplinamiento mimético de ese otro racial, quien con sus desbordes y excesos ponía en peligro la frágil y urgida autoridad del discurso estatal. De ahí que la lógica de invisibilizar el orden racializado que funda las bases de las dinámicas sociales y de las apuestas de ciudadanía de la Cuba posrevolución ha contribuido a naturalizar las prácticas de dominación, exclusión y discriminación heredadas del periodo colonial. Sin embargo, esta misma retórica oficialista configuró las estructuras pedagógicas de la nueva nación en franca disputa con los vicios y rezagos sociales del pasado insular, una operación en la que el sujeto negro racializado resultó resignificado como el sujeto objeto ejemplarizante de la pedagogía del Estado-nación, trasvestido allí, en esa pedagogía, con los signos de la marginalidad y la exclusión. Nicolás Guillén Landrian se sumergió con absoluta avidez en las acciones de transformación social promulgadas por la Revolución, pero lo hizo rastreando las marcas y las relaciones de la colonialidad que estructuraban el proceso mismo de modernidad incentivado por el Estado cubano después del 59. Se trata de un creador que se inclinó por la realización de un cine experimental e irreverente que, a partir de una amplia variedad de estrategias expresivas, como el uso de recursos tropológicos en el proceso mismo de yuxtaponer planos visuales y sonoros, produjo una narrativa crítica con respecto a la pedagogía del discurso oficial de la Revolución. Nicolás con especificidades en cada uno de sus enunciados fílmicos, usufructuó el lenguaje de la retórica oficial del Estado-Nación y los esquemas más recurrentes del discurso político para producir otras lecturas a partir de sus propias prácticas, para amplificar además los sentidos sociales y los sistemas de significaciones de las estrategias discursivas de la nación. Desde los primeros años de la Revolución cubana y con la creación del ICA y el Instituto Cubano del Arte e Industrias Cinematográficas en 1959, el cine ocuparía un rol fundamental como herramienta informativa del desarrollo histórico del joven proceso y las diferentes etapas y problemáticas que tendría que enfrentar. En esa coyuntura política, los documentales encontraron un terreno fértil para hacer comulgar los intereses propagandísticos de la Revolución con los presupuestos creativos de movimientos cinematográficos que estaban trastocando los regímenes expresivos sobre los cuales se había asentado el quehacer fílmico internacional. En este sentido, los artistas cubanos recibirían un gran influjo del neorrealismo italiano, la nueva ola francesa, el cinema verité, el free cinema y otras improntas de realizadores latinoamericanos que configurarían la variada amalgama creativa presente en las prácticas cinematográficas de la isla. Es ya paradigmática en ese periodo la labor del documentalista Santiago Álvarez, que todo el mundo conoce, quien con sus orquestaciones visuales sonoras y otro sinnúmero de audacias formales no solo rememoraba en el Caribe la huella vanguardista de un creador como Sigaberto, sino que también Álvarez sentaba precedentes en los modos políticamente correctos de anudar el discurso apologético del proceso revolucionario con las rupturas más emancipadoras del lenguaje cinematográfico. Pero junto a él, un grupo disímiles de jóvenes realizadores trataban de enrumbar su labor creadora alejados de esos tópicos triunfalistas. Más bien irrumpieron en la escena fílmica cubana con propuestas que complejizaban los lineamientos y la adscripción irreflexiva a los presupuestos de la política de la revolución emergente. Curiosamente, muchos de ellos también eligieron el género documental como el vehículo expositivo que les permitía de un modo más expedito organizar sus indagaciones temáticas y levantar agudas interrogaciones en torno a las contradicciones, los olvidos, las exclusiones y las tareas pendientes que la revolución tendría que abordar. Nicolás Guillén fue de ese grupo de creadores que movilizó sus indagaciones en torno a la producción de subjetividades y al discurso político posterior a 1959. Para ellos el cine era un escenario de interlocución con las prácticas discursivas de la revolución, pero también un espacio de interpelación política. Así, la relación entre los procesos de racialización, los relatos de nación, la producción de la diferencia y sus dimensiones políticas serían como sus ejes analíticos que iba a dar pie a toda su producción filmográfica. En 1961, recordemos que el primer acto de censura de la Revolución cubana se da en torno a un documental PM realizado por los creadores Orlando Jiménez Leal y Saba Cabrera Infante, un retrato nocturno de La Habana que sin entrevistas ni en texto alguno dejaba emerger a través de una cámara en mano esos sujetos fantasmas de la noche, mayoritariamente la población afrodescendiente, que bajo el ritmo de la rumba y la embriaguez, o sea, borrachos, no se mostraban explícitamente comulgando con los intereses del proyecto político cubano, ni evidenciando las conquistas de la Revolución cubana. Los únicos temas susceptibles de ser trabajados en ese periodo, según las premisas oficiales para la creación artística en Cuba. La censura a ese documental y la discusión que trajo consigo dio pie al famoso discurso de Fidel Castro el 30 de junio de 1961 en la Biblioteca Nacional de Cuba, conocido como Palabras a los Intelectuales, y donde marcaría hasta hoy, hasta este momento en el que estamos hablando, las pautas de la política cultural del gobierno. Allí Fidel Castro pronunció la lapidaria frase que ha acompañado durante todos estos años al proceso de creación artística en Cuba: con la revolución todo, contra la revolución nada. A esa circunstancia se uniría el tabú, y esto es muy importante, se uniría el tabú impuesto sobre las cuestiones raciales en Cuba tras la declaración del fin del racismo promulgada por Fidel Castro en 1962, dando como resultado que la política oficial del socialismo en Cuba se inclinara por profundizar aún más las marcas de la herida racial que ya figuraban en las relaciones y proyectos sociales del espacio Caribe desde el siglo XVI. El silencio lapidario que decretó sobre toda problemática o disenso que enturbiara la dramaturgia arrolladora de una nación que a golpe de gestos simbólicos ha sabido cultivar políticamente sus enunciados triunfalistas, aunque ellos solo radiquen en los ilusorios caminos de su férrea voluntad discursiva, vino a callar y a trastocar la libertad de expresión de aquellos que creyeron que la revolución cubana sería el espacio plural para solventar y desnaturalizar los años de esclavitud, exclusión y diferencia racial. Entonces, el racismo abandonó la discusión pública insular, contribuyendo así a la supervivencia, reproducción e incluso creación de ideologías racistas y estereotipos en una sociedad que particularmente en los años 60, pero yo diría que hasta hoy, todavía estaba lejos de ser racialmente igualitaria. Nicolás Guillén, él mismo un sujeto incómodo, racializado por un ejercicio de poder, no dudó en desafiar estas prerrogativas de la retórica oficialista para situarse en la intersección de los procesos políticos de significación. Esto quiere decir hacer de su operación artística un escenario de visibilización de las contiendas políticas y un lugar de enunciación de las relaciones y connivencias entre los dispositivos de autoridad, disciplinamiento, obediencia e higienización del Estado-Nación y los excesos, desbordes, ironías y subversiones de la puesta en acto de las prácticas performativas de eso que Homi Bhabha llama mimetismo colonial. Como nos recuerda la antropóloga Rita Segato, la raza no es una cualidad inherente al sujeto racializado o más específicamente a su organismo, sino una forma de calificar anclada en la mirada que recae sobre él. Por tanto, las interrogaciones que estos gestos artísticos suscitan nos conducen a repensar las articulaciones y tensiones entre la producción de subjetividades y los procesos de diferencia colonial, entre los saberes y ejercicios de poder normativos y la mirada móvil de ese doble disciplinario. Nicolás Guillén Landrian ostentó el privilegio de explorar zonas del contexto social desterradas entonces, tanto del quehacer creativo, de otras manifestaciones artísticas de su momento histórico, como de esa euforia de los relatos triunfalistas del discurso oficial. De esta manera, en sus propuestas, podríamos ver que la forma cinematográfica transitó por caminos alejados de ortodoxias narrativas y al hacerlo sumergió al espectador en un rol activo y movilizador con respecto a los hábitos receptivos asentados dentro de las tradiciones más manidas del género documental. Los quiebres de su ejercicio creativo tomaron y potenciaron poderosos ejes de la escritura y el análisis cinematográfico como el punto de vista, el fuera de campo, la profundidad de campo, los regímenes de la mirada, los encuadres, el sonido y el montaje, para que funcionaran como conceptos que rompían con la tiranía de un narrador omnisciente y siempre pedagógico, cuya meta final sería la de develarnos el verdadero conocimiento, las pautas correctas de una única posibilidad de lectura, tal y como estaba, digamos, ese narrador omnisciente que era, digamos, todo el discurso oficial de la Revolución, estaba presente en todas las televisoras, en todas las radios, en todos los discursos que nos rodeaban todo el tiempo. Las rupturas con el autoritarismo enunciativo del lenguaje cinematográfico no solo horizontalizaban el proceso de construcción social del sentido, también anunciaban otras tramas de indisciplinamiento en la práctica de un creador que, por supuesto, el gesto de disentir con el verticalismo de las prácticas políticas en Cuba era solo una de ellas. Les voy a poner un pequeño fragmento de Barrio Viejo. Ay, perdón, se me fue. Es el primer documental con el que él tiene, digamos, su primer gran problema de censura con respecto al discurso revolucionario. Para ganar tiempo no se lea, vamos a ir leyendo en la medida en que pasan las imágenes. reflexiva del cine de Nicolás centraba su eficacia narrativa en la ambigüedad y la polisemia con la que orquestaba sus contrapuntos visuales y sonoros, como el contrapunto de la presentación y que vimos acá en términos sonoros y digamos en términos de imagen, a través de un montaje que, si bien en algunas de las propuestas alcanzaba el paroxismo de la violencia, la velocidad o el frenesí o la fragmentación discursiva, y en otras amalgamaba con más sosiego los diferentes planos, siempre fue el elemento nodal de su poética, el contrapunto visual y sonoro. Un montaje que le permitía hacer del contraste enunciativo su principal lugar reflexivo. En estas coordenadas analíticas, Nicolás se situaba para hacer del contraste entre la solemnidad del discurso institucional y la transgresión lúdica de la cultura popular su principal estrategia, y esgrimir así la crítica a un sistema político que pretendía borrar de súbito e impositivamente su pasado inmediato, configurando de paso a los sujetos de la abyección: negros, religiosos, pobres, marginales, y una larga lista que incluía a cualquiera que se atrevía a disentir o a meditar sobre la lógica del proceso revolucionario. Por ello, lo nuevo y lo viejo, lo blanco y lo negro, la tradición y la modernidad, la solemnidad y lo festivo, la devoción a las figuras religiosas y el culto al héroe, lo prohibido y lo permitido, la música de cámara y la música popular, lo contemplativo y lo irracional, lo legible y lo ilegible, la literalidad y el tropo funcionaban como pares categoriales indisolubles y correlacionados en el vocabulario cinematográfico de Nicolás. Él tenía dudas, tenía preguntas sobre los cambios que se estaban suscitando y quería exponerlas a partir de un modo muy personal de hacer cine, que no fuera igual a los demás. Un cine de vanguardia donde las imágenes resultaran más importantes que las palabras. Las imágenes devenían creadoras de un lenguaje nuevo, atrevido e interesante para el espectador, con una agenda política que ponía en tensión las tesituras más polémicas del discurso de la Revolución. Dice Nicolás: me atreví a hacer cosas que no fueron bien vistas. Acá en Cofea Arábiga, su segundo gran problema.
El método de siembra directa tiene sus requisitos técnicos. 1. Tratar la semilla con un desinfectante.
Exacto.
2. Sembrar por medio de
no me paren, Elena.
Al respecto, que da la profundidad
acá en
requerida,
Cofea Arábiga,
1.5 centímetros. 3. Mantener la bolsa sembrada. Protegida del sol y regarla cada vez que sea necesario. 4.
Ahí se ven, hay una voz en off, que es la de un locutor televisivo que explica el proceso. Esto fue un momento muy sensible para la Revolución Cubana porque se llamó el cordón de La Habana. Se quitaron todos los árboles frutales que había alrededor de La Habana para sembrar la caña de azúcar, y entonces por la televisión todo el tiempo explicaban cómo era el proceso y cómo había que involucrarse en la zafra del millón, la llamada zafra del millón. Acá Nicolás prefería devolvernos una concatenación de enunciados visuales y sonoros que emergían de un profundo proceso de reflexión autoral, aderezados con la ironía e hilaridad con las que jugaba a desdibujar al narrador didáctico del cine y de la televisión cubana. Así los cuerpos. Esto es muy importante porque él sale con su cámara a entrevistar a la gente en la calle para ver qué piensan de lo que está pasando en la televisión con la zafra del millón, y entonces entrevista a esto que era muy usual en La Habana, a una parte de la población rusa, checa, de todos los países socialistas. Y no es que no haya traducción, es que él intencionalmente dejó eso sin traducir, ¿no? Las paradojas y el sarcasmo con los que Landrian desautorizaba las voces rectoras de la política nacional pasaban también por diseccionar esa elocución como signos materiales que se yuxtaponían en la pantalla con otros elementos muy dispares, potenciando así su particular irreverencia ante los ejercicios impositivos del poder. Es innegable que en términos de la historicidad del campo cinematográfico, los vínculos conceptuales y políticos entre las producciones contemporáneas del audiovisual en Cuba y las creaciones de Nicolás Guillén Landrian resultan altisonantes. Esto a pesar de que la obra de este realizador permaneció casi desconocida entre las nuevas generaciones hasta el año 2000, debido a las sucesivas censuras de las que fue objeto por parte del Estado y a la expulsión definitiva de Nicolás como trabajador del ICAI en los primeros años de la década de los 70. El colofón de ese proceso, lo que dio lugar a su expulsión final, y esto se los pongo mientras hablo, fue este documental que se llama Taller de Línea 18. A él lo mandaron a hacer un documental sobre las empresas de autobuses en Cuba y lo que él decide firmar es la asamblea de los trabajadores en esa fábrica. En este material, Nicolás desplegó todos los recursos expresivos que había venido forjando en cada una de sus anteriores propuestas fílmicas, pero acá el humor y la ironía que siempre modelaban sus giros lingüísticos no alcanzaron a darle espesor u opacidad metafórica a la rectitud de la pregunta que a modo de intertítulo colapsó la pantalla de esta asamblea.
Tuvo un gran rechazo de las posiciones oficiales.
Y él pregunta, ¿está usted dispuesto a ser analizado por esta asamblea? Pero no solo se lo pregunta a los trabajadores, sino a todo digamos, el público que asiste a sus documentales. Una pregunta que dentro de la conjunción narrativa del documental estaba dirigida a los obreros de una empresa de fabricación de ómnibus. Sin embargo, los resortes políticos de ese momento histórico conocido como el quinquenio gris de la cultura cubana, la peor época, creo que de nuevo ahora mismo hay una época muy grave de censura a la cultura cubana, pero este sería nuestro referente, el famoso quinquenio gris, y la cacería de brujas desatada contra las intelectuales del país y todo aquel que se atreviera a disentir, hicieron estallar la polisemia contenida en aquella interrogante, un trayecto de sentidos que también conectaba con los propios itinerarios biográfico-artísticos de Nicolás Guillén. El creador que se atrevió a preguntar y no renunció nunca a la posibilidad de ser un mejor revolucionario, trabajador, honesto, crítico, inquisitivo y coherente con sus principios, absolutamente involucrado en el debate racial y en la renovación del lenguaje expresivo del documental en Cuba, fue despojado de sus armas de lucha, la materia cinematográfica. Y remito a todas estas palabras porque son las palabras recurrentes en ese periodo histórico. Es ya muy conocido el hecho de que a Nicolás, después de sus primeros documentales a mediados de los años 60, lo tomaron preso por problemas ideológicos que según sus censores contenían sus propuestas fílmicas y lo envían a pasar su reeducación en una granja en la isla de Pino. Otra realizadora también, la primera realizadora cubana negra en Cuba después de la Revolución, Sara Gómez, le dedica una serie a todos estos presos políticos e ideológicos del sistema revolucionario en la otra isla. Allí, a este encarcelamiento en la granja en la isla de Pino, se sumó un diagnóstico de esquizofrenia y el ingreso en un hospital psiquiátrico. Allí el director de fotografía, Livio Delgado, lo fue a ver y Landrian le dice: coño, Livio, mira lo que le pasa a los que se hacen los locos, se vuelven locos. Nicolás Guillén Landrian transparenta desde la ambivalencia del mimetismo colonial los entramados de un sistema en el que muy tempranamente se dejó de ensayar y discutir sobre las múltiples posibilidades de ser revolucionario. Un sistema político donde lo más importante era parecer revolucionario sin entrar en contradicciones o en disidencias con el guión establecido. De lo contrario, corrías el riesgo de ser clasificado como marginal, violento, loco y excluido de las prerrogativas de la revolución, que para muchos era la posibilidad misma de ejercer su creación artística en el campo intelectual en el que se formaron. La fuerza disruptiva del cine de Landrian, y con esto termino, y la complejidad de su gramática fílmica lo convirtieron en un realizador indomable, difícil de silenciar e imposible de archivar. En este sentido, la rabiosa modernidad de sus filmes ha hecho que, a pesar del silencio y la censura, se hayan convertido varias décadas después en un referente obligado del nuevo cine independiente en la isla y en uno de los nombres más valorados del documental cubano de todos los tiempos. en sus propuestas cinematográficas emergieron otras narrativas sobre lateralidades complejas con huellas visibles de un pasado colonial y que en el tiempo presente de la nación se mantenían remisas a comulgar con las sistemáticas actualizaciones de las políticas de emborronamiento, un dispositivo elocuente de que en Cuba se debería haber profundizado el debate sobre los sujetos desatendidos por el peso de la historia. Revisitar en la actualidad las paradojas y ambivalencias en torno al ser nacional y las pedagogías del discurso oficial de la nación en aquel cronotopo postcolonial que la Revolución cubana de 1959 también inauguraba para el espacio Caribe, implica, entre otros muchos elementos, reflexionar cuidadosamente sobre las consecuencias sociales de una agenda política que elija el mutismo, la censura, la exclusión y, de última, la criminalización de los sujetos impregnados de las marcas de un pasado asimétrico y de problemáticas reivindicadoras cruciales para su devenir histórico. Gracias.
Cualquiera te da una idea mejor que la tuya.
Muchas gracias, Giselle. Vamos rápido, perdimos un poco de tiempo entre el fantasma que me jaló la silla y el estupor de la comida, pero entonces si tomamos unas preguntitas para trabajar en esta interesantísima conferencia. ¿Alguien? Ahí, David, por favor.
Gracias, Giselle. Es muy interesante la ponencia y el material, que no conocía nada. Tengo dos preguntas. Una es que en varios momentos en la ponencia enfatizaste la diferencia a nivel formal entre esta película de Guillén y el discurso oficial en la televisión. También mencionaste varios referentes del cine cubano postrevolucionario, Santiago Álvarez, Sara Gómez, mencionaste, que bueno, como sabes bien, no tiene nada que ver la forma que ellos utilizaban con la forma de la televisión. El cine cubano ya está haciendo estas rupturas con el uso de la voz en off, etcétera, el montaje, el uso del sonido. Y los fragmentos que pasaste me recordaron muchísimo al nuevo cine. O sea, cuando pusiste la secuencia inicial, nada más el sonido es la primera secuencia de La Hora de los Hornos, la película de Solanes y Getino de 68, 5 años después. Entonces, no sé si entendí bien que está de algún modo utilizando las herramientas del nuevo cine o del cine revolucionario para hacer una crítica a la revolución, ¿no? Esa es como la forma en que yo lo vi. Entonces, el hecho de que haya sido dejado de lado tiene más que ver, según mi interpretación de tu ponencia, tiene más que ver con la crítica directamente política que hace el régimen que a la forma cinematográfica que utilizan, ¿no? La pregunta es sobre, hacia el final hablaste de cómo desde el 2000 aproximadamente ya ha sido reconocida la obra. ¿En qué medida ese reconocimiento ha sido por parte del ICAIC? ¿En qué medida, o sea, de dónde viene ese reconocimiento? Porque que yo sepa, el ICAIC siempre, no sé si todavía, pero históricamente siempre había mantenido un control discursivo fuerte sobre no solamente lo que es el cine revolucionario cubano, sino lo que es el nuevo cine norteamericano, a partir de los textos, las reuniones, los festivales de cine, su presencia internacional, etc. Entonces, ¿cómo se marca esa relación?
¿Tomamos otra? Déjenme contestar para no hacerme bola, si les parece, sí, rapidísimo. Voy a tratar de ser muy puntual para poder recoger más preguntas. Justo la premisa que yo tengo con respecto a la obra de Nicolás Guillén Landrian es que justamente utiliza la forma cinematográfica que comparten todos ellos, ¿no? Porque él pertenece al grupo de Santiago Álvarez. Entonces, lo que él hace es ocupar justamente las propias estrategias formales de ese cine experimental que fue paradigmático para otras creaciones en América Latina, y justamente a partir de la especificidad del lenguaje colar la crítica al sistema revolucionario emergente. Cuando él habla esta primera escena de Barrio Viejo, bueno, pues justamente está poniendo desde un punto de vista a ese sujeto, de alguna manera olvidado por el proceso revolucionario, incluso prohibido, ya no puede hablar de los problemas que tiene, que pasan por el aspecto de conflictos raciales y de procesos de racialización, que es mucho más complejo. No puede, bueno, ponerlos, visibilizarlos, hablar de ellos. Entonces, ese punto de vista de él mirando y en contrapunto con la chica blanca, mirando estas imágenes que no necesariamente están pasando, aconteciendo, no es lo que ellos están viendo, sino que hay un juego con el montaje de imágenes que se yuxtaponen de marchas, de la gente que está haciendo cotidianamente en los barrios, y entonces es aparentemente lo que está viendo él contrapuesto con la chica blanca. O sea, a partir justamente de los elementos del montaje y el sonido es que él habla un poco de esa crítica del sistema social. Bueno, ¿dónde quedan, por ejemplo, las prácticas religiosas que vienen de antecedente afrocubano, ¿no? ¿Qué lugar tienen para que el héroe dé paso en las casas, en las puertas? Hasta hace muy poco en todas nuestras puertas, bueno, cada vez menos, pero tenía mucha fuerza, teníamos que poner, esta es tu casa, Fidel. O sea, en vez del Sagrado Corazón de Jesús o los orillas o deidades, bueno, pues esta es tu casa, Fidel. Entonces, un poco él está hablando de esos procesos que no estaban permitidos. En Santiago Álvarez uno no ve esta cosa. Sara Gómez tiene un trabajo como mucho más, en ese sentido yo hago una relación muy interesante entre ellos dos, porque Sara Gómez se va a la Isla de la Juventud y aparentemente está entrevistando los procesos de reeducación de esos jóvenes que tenían problemas ideológicos, pero en realidad Sara le hace preguntas muy incómodas que también la censuran a ella. Sara Gómez ahora mismo en la narrativa oficial del cine cubano tiene un papel muy ambiguo, porque o estaba con el sistema o estaba en contra del sistema. Lo cierto es que la muerte de Sara Gómez en 1973, muy tempranamente, es una gran duda que pesa sobre el ICAI. ¿Qué pasó con Sara Gómez? Que fue censurada, digo, una figura como muy polémica y no se sabe cuáles fueron las causas de su muerte, ¿no? Entonces, en ese sentido, el reconocimiento de la obra de Nicolás Guillén Landrian no viene del ICAI, viene de la Escuela Internacional de Cine de San Antonio de los Baños, con una tesis que hace Manuel Sayas, un documentalista cubano, que va a Miami, consigue digamos, un intercambio con la Universidad de Miami en el Cuban National Heritage, y hace una investigación sobre la obra de Landrian, donde Nicolás Guillén Landrian muere en Miami totalmente olvidado y sin poder filmar nunca más. Entonces es Sayas el que rescata la figura de Nicolás Guillén Landrian, y después una cosa muy importante que pasa para los que saben de cine, en la Escuela Nacional de Cine y Radio y Televisión en Quinta y 20, digamos en Miramar, que es que empiezan a hacerse los festivales de jóvenes realizadores, digamos en una relación como muy ambigua con el ICAI. Y ahí empieza a tomar mucha fuerza la figura de Nicolás Guillén Landrian. Y yo diría que hoy tiene un papel crucial en todo el movimiento de videocreación en Cuba, tanto para los cineastas como para los artistas, digamos, de artes visuales formados en el Instituto Superior de Arte, ¿no?
Luis.
Gracias, Giselle. Yo había visto tu trabajo, creo que un par de veces en el MUAC, discutiendo estos archivos de la Revolución, pero en los artistas contemporáneos. Y entonces esta ponencia me permite entender un poco la parte histórica, pero creo que la fortaleza de tu trabajo es esta movilización de cómo un archivo, ciertas imágenes de la cultura visual revolucionaria, pensaría desde los finales de los 50 y luego durante los 60, se ha vuelto el lugar, digamos, de la subversión para muchos artistas contemporáneos para criticar al régimen. Y el caso más claro que tengo es el de Lázaro Saavedra, que lo trabajaste, pero igualmente está Toirac haciendo cosas con las fotografías de la Revolución. Entonces quería ver si podías completar un poco cómo esta recuperación de Guillén la estás haciendo desde el presente, porque Cuba, digamos, y las situaciones que están pasando en Cuba actualmente permiten horadar el nacionalismo y activarlo desde otros lugares.
Claro, sí, bueno, una ponencia saben que no da tiempo para todo, lamentablemente, pero justo yo llego a la obra de Nicolás Guillén Landrian, incluso a la obra de Sara Gómez, que, digo, la habíamos estudiado en la carrera de Historia del Arte en la facultad, en Cuba, como una realizadora, la primera mujer realizadora negra, pero sobre todo pensando en las prácticas religiosas, ¿no?, de ascendencia afrocubana. Y yo de vuelta llego a Nicolás Guillén Landrian y a Sara Gómez a partir justamente del trabajo que he llevado con los artistas contemporáneos y con los cineastas contemporáneos, que recuperan a la idea del archivo, un poco que tú lo decías antes de irnos a comer, es como políticamente muy disruptiva en el caso del campo artístico cubano, porque además siempre yo digo, el caso cubano, que insisto todo el tiempo, es casi mi postura política de no seguirlo presentando como una excepcionalidad, sino de alguna manera ponerlo en la cartografía de todas las discusiones que nosotros tenemos con respecto a otros territorios del Caribe y de América Latina, pero en el caso cubano el campo artístico siempre ha cumplido el papel de una sociedad civil inexistente. Entonces, justamente a partir del trabajo que yo hago con los artistas contemporáneos cubanos, es que uno puede también revisitar críticamente el archivo de la Revolución y de esos primeros años que está absolutamente custodiado por los aparatos de censura del ICAI, del Consejo Nacional de las Artes Plásticas, ¿no?, del Instituto Cubano de Televisión, no solo de cine, sino también de televisión. Son elementos muy custodiados por los aparatos de censura y que están muy bien aceitados. Entonces, justamente a partir del trabajo que hacen los artistas contemporáneos con el archivo como un lugar de subversión política, bueno, pues es que yo también, mi labor investigativa de alguna manera, bueno, pues hace un pliegue interesante también con estos elementos de, digamos, estos primeros años de la Revolución que habían sido leídos históricamente desde otros lugares, ¿no? Entonces son los artistas y son nuestras investigaciones los que recuperamos también estas prácticas audiovisuales con otras miradas, con otras perspectivas, ¿no? No sé si eso responde, porque hablar de Lázaro Saavedra, que me encanta, ya sabes, o de Toirá, creo que amerita como otro espacio de discusión, ¿no?
Ya estamos con 20 minutos, ¿no? Mira, yo ya flojita y cooperando, más bien ustedes digan. Bueno, antes de que me maten, Adriana me está viendo con cara de... Vamos, Rita, vamos.
Sí. Bueno, mira, yo veo en tu presentación dos partes. Una parte que es discursiva y una parte que es la que uno esperaba, que era saber quién es Nicolás Guillén y qué pasaba con ese cine de los años 60 que discutía una problemática. Pienso que la primera parte es muy monolítica.
¿Muy qué?
Muy monolítica.
Ah.
Es decir, es una manera de pensar lo que pasaba culturalmente en la Revolución cubana como si fuera una dictadura absoluta. Y pienso que eso es algo que hay que revisar un poco. Claro. No pasó así en el campo de las artes visuales, no pasó así en el campo del diseño. Quizás había un aparato de censura súper grandísimo que no se podía percibir, pero me parece que sería más rico tu punto de vista y tu discurso si fueras un poco más dialéctica y no tan monolítica al respecto. No tengo nada que decir acerca del documental de Nicolás Guillén porque me pareció fantástico y me pareció un lenguaje innovador, etcétera. Pero por eso digo, hay dos partes en tu forma de presentar.
Claro, bueno, eso es como muy polémico, Rita, porque yo podría como disentir de eso, ¿no? Porque, claro, exacto, digo, de esto se trata, de abrir la discusión en este sentido, y yo creo que quizás en aras de presentar una ponencia, pues uno anuda como muchos argumentos, pero justamente de lo que se trata, y eso sí me gustaría que quedara claro para ti y para los demás, es de complejizar ese momento histórico, porque creo que la tendencia general es a tener una perspectiva muy monolítica sobre el papel de la Revolución cubana para Cuba y para el resto de América Latina. Y justamente una de las cosas más problemáticas en la contemporaneidad, incluso esto es testimonio de los propios artistas, activistas, de los realizadores, es el peso simbólico, y con eso creo que arranco en una parte importante de la ponencia, es el peso simbólico de la Revolución cubana en la geopolítica del territorio, que impide incluso la tarea política de complejizar el proceso revolucionario. Entonces creo que mi perspectiva y mi lugar de enunciación tiene que ver justamente con la idea de complejizar esos procesos. Y si el movimiento del nuevo cine latinoamericano tiene en Cuba y en el papel del cine, en la función social del cine, en la Revolución cubana, una bandera fundamental, también está plagado de contradicciones. Entonces justamente me parece que el caso de Nicolás Guillén Landrián, desde una marca, digamos, racial, y el caso de Sara Gómez también, aportan a esa complejidad desde las propias especificidades del lenguaje cinematográfico, ¿no? Entonces esa es como mi premisa y mi postura al respecto, ¿no? Yo creo que no se trata de decir abajo la revolución, como dijo Fidel, con la revolución todo, contra la revolución nada, creo que no. Se trata de complejizar justamente un momento histórico que, digamos, de vuelta nos serviría para revisar el campo de las relaciones de poder también, ¿no?
Muchas gracias, Giselle. Yo creo que es sumamente interesante pensar estos argumentos sobre la representación y los límites y fantasías de los proyectos aún revolucionarios en términos de lo que deja fuera, de las racialidades, de todas estas producciones. Pero bueno, nuevamente muchas gracias, Giselle. Un aplauso otra vez.
Gracias.
Y por último, para este panel invitamos a Rachel Bash a que venga con nosotros. Brevemente la voy presentando. Rachel es profesora de la Universidad de Rhodes en Sudáfrica, donde ella ha trabajado el problema palestino en relación al arte. Tiene muchos textos y tiene un trabajo de licenciatura en como artes visuales, y ahora pues está como profesora en un doctorado en Historia del Arte y ahora como profesora en Historia del Arte y Estudios Visuales. Ahora empieza el setting.
Hello. Hi. There's one thing I'd like you to do if you have internet on your cell phones before we start. I have been trying to find an image, or actually connect an image and get it onto my laptop, of Ana Teresa Mendes, who's done an artwork called Borrar la Frontera. And if you could have a look at that artwork, because it will be relevant to the discussion at the end, and it might be nice for you. I will explain it, but it might be nice for you to actually have a look at it. Borrar la frontera, so erasing the border. Okay. So my paper is titled Sites of Division: Political Tourism and Artistic Intervention in the West Bank Occupied Palestinian Territories. Can everybody hear me clearly? Okay, see. Walls, borders, and their corresponding ideologies of division and domination are on the rise globally. Nations across the world are hardening borders, excluding migrants, seeking refuge, and dividing people into segregated enclaves characterized by fear and insecurity. In South Africa, the apartheid system of national security and a fortress mentality has morphed into a classist private security system where gated communities and defensive architecture are on the rise. The legacy of racism and violence continues with the increasing violence against foreign nationals and the horrific treatment of refugees and immigrants from the rest of the African continent. In 2016, students in South Africa took to the streets protesting for free education. The response of the university was to increase security. So to put razor wire around buildings, our library has now got a cage around it. So when people ask for something for free, their security is increased. I just wanted to show you these images. So, and in order to kind of contextualize the topic for us, that's an image of a gated community in South Africa. So it seems like it's not all that violent. And that, I think, is one of the sort of the subtle aspects of architectural violence that we also need to be addressing. There's another image there is of the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in 2016, where they've now put reams of razor wire around the art building. And in this image on the bottom, I documented in 2017 at a conference in Uganda in Kampala. And that is a private home with fortifications, as you can see. We also have a wall that is being built in Mexico. And something that was quite interesting for me to discover that I wasn't aware of, and that had to do with the US-Mexico Civil War and the fact that actually the areas that are now being annexed and are taken over by the US, the areas where they are building this wall, were previously the homes of Mexicans. And so I found it quite interesting that not only are people being prevented from being able to move freely, there's also a wall that's being built in areas that were actually people's homes at one point, historically. So that was something I wasn't aware of in relation to Mexico, and I did a little bit of digging, and my history is obviously not 100%, but I did think that was quite an interesting sort of narrative that I was not aware of in relation to Mexico and the US. So this is an image of Donald Trump talking about the first section of the Mexico wall that he's currently planning to build. So that's just a little bit of global contextualization for you. Hold on. Just give me a second. So this is the West Bank. This is Bethlehem. The Israeli nation state used walls and other defensive structures as instruments for the domination and oppression of Palestinians within the occupied Palestinian territories. The sophisticated Israeli checkpoint and barrier wall system, in collaboration with a punitive permit and passport system, facilitates the abuse of basic human rights. In response to the socio-political reality of Israel and the occupied territories, an economy of political tourism has emerged that caters to the needs and perceived agenda of certain visitors to the area. While based in Israel and the occupied territories in 2013 and 2014, I documented examples of artworks and interventions within Palestinian spaces that respond to and simultaneously resist the psychological closure imposed by Israeli colonization and apartheid in this area. In this presentation, I unpack the intersection of art, tourism, and social justice as it plays out in this site of division and relates to a global politics of fear that generates and sustains the use of walls as instruments of domination and division. Researchers, artists, journalists, academics, activists, and other individuals who are concerned with questions of social justice travel to Israel and the occupied territories to witness, protest, document, and gather experiential information about the ongoing colonization, apartheid, and occupation of historic Palestine. Most of these activities are done with good intention. Individuals seek to understand the lived experience of people in these places, or to record images and stories for the purpose of educating others, through artworks and slogans placed onto walls and other surfaces as a form of resistance. This type of sightseeing takes place in physical sites where divisions of power privilege certain perspectives while masking or denying others. Historically, tourists have traveled to this region for a number of different purposes. Let's get rid of this and go over there. For a number of different purposes, including religious pilgrimage, an interest in architecture or archaeology, or in order to visit family and friends. Historic Palestine, now Israel and the occupied territories, is a significant site for Muslim, Christian, and Jewish pilgrimage. Unfortunately, the negative representation of Palestinians as a security threat within Israeli national discourse filters through to the global tourism sector. This discourse of fear and threat that exists in relation to these spaces has resulted in insecurity and hesitancy when it comes to traveling beyond Israel's complex borders into the occupied territories. This has had a negative effect on traditional mass tourism and other forms of tourism in the area, which has been a strong motivating factor for the development of a political tourism industry, as well as, so political tourism, which I'll go into in a moment, is a subgenre of alternative tourism, and wall tourism, which is a subgenre of political tourism that relates specifically to walls and artistic intervention as a form of activism. While there is a small but growing body of literature that examines political tourism and wall tourism from a heritage and tourism studies perspective, there is less material that examines this phenomenon from an art historical and visual studies framework. Alternative tourism has developed as a reaction to mass tourism. Mass tourism is characterized by large groups of people traveling to seaside resorts and club-made destinations, where imposing architecture has been slapped onto an existing landscape to support the mass tourism industry, with little to no consideration for the actual environment or the people who already live within it. Tacky, tasteless theme parks, environmental degradation, and cultural homogenization are generally associated with this form of tourism. According to Isaac, alternative tourism has been defined in opposition to and as a desirable replacement for conventional mass tourism. Political tourism is a subgenre of alternative tourism that relates closely to the category of justice tourism or solidarity tourism. Alternative tours, which is a significant tourism group in Palestine who specifically use political tourism within their offerings as a tour group, have also published additional material on this particular topic. And so what they say is that the alternative tours characterizes political tourism as comprising of tours that are often located in areas of conflict or social strife and aim to educate visitors about political issues through exposure and commentary. Wall tourism is integrated into political tourism and is related specifically to tours that focus on the architecture of bordered and segregated spaces, where walls are used as tools of domination as well as sites of artistic intervention and creative resistance. Alternative tours, in collaboration with the Alternative Tourism Group, provide alternative tours in Israel and the West Bank occupied territory. In October 2013, I participated in one of the Green Olive Tours, day trips to Bethlehem. One of the stops on the tour to Bethlehem is at a section of the Israeli apartheid wall where Banksy's famous graffiti works are visible. Since the destruction of homes and businesses in Bethlehem with the Second Intifada, followed by the construction of the apartheid wall from 2002 onwards, the local economy of the city has been destroyed. The Palestinian inhabitants of this area have come up with innovative ways in which to use the apartheid wall in order to generate an income. Inhabitants of the city, especially those who own homes and businesses that have been destroyed or isolated by the wall's path, are using the circumstances not only to generate an income through tourism, especially political tourism, but also to draw attention to the inhumane conditions that have been imposed on them. On the tour, we are given time to look inside Banksy's shop, which is the image I showed you, where one can purchase reproductions of artworks on t-shirts and postcards. Just around the corner You can eat at the Wall Steakhouse or purchase curios from the Wall Curio Shop. Opposite the Wall Steakhouse, one of the business owners in the area has painted a white figure, that is white square that is used to project movies and football matches. As one can see, I think we have lost the image. I'm afraid I've lost the image, but the image that was supposed to follow this one is just next to this area. Painted on top of some of the graffiti is basically just a white square that they then use to project movies and football matches, for example. So, next to the homemade cinema, the owner of the Wall Steakhouse has placed a large picture of a piece of steak to advertise his business. And the thin artery that runs between the restaurant and the apartheid wall has been named Wall Street. Just wanted to show you a couple of the images of the actual graffiti within Bethlehem in the West Bank. This is relatively new. People are not sure exactly who has painted this, but the suspicion is that it's a Banksy work and it's from 2017. And if you cannot read it, in this one image, you see Trump wearing a Jewish skull cap, and he says, "I'm going to build you a brother." In this image, you can see Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump kissing on the apartheid wall. In drawing attention to the apartheid wall through the use of graffiti, posters, paintings, and photography, artists and activists have assisted in making the wall a site of interest for others to visit and add their contributions. The attention paid to artwork on the wall has also mobilized a number of other international artists and graffiti writers who travel to the area specifically to place artwork on the enormous wall canvas and to assist in creating awareness of the apartheid structures and ideologies that control and divide the space. The wall has even been termed the ultimate holiday destination for graffiti writers. This resists one of the primary functions of the apartheid wall, which is to divide the Palestinians from each other and to exclude them, not only from Israel, but from global visibility, thus reducing their right to exist, and by extension, their right to be seen and heard. Political tourism and wall tourism take an educational approach to tourism and do make appropriate use of the artworks on the wall in their tours for the most part. This form of tourism also increases the visibility of Palestinians in a way that resists the actual closure that is signified by the wall. So a wall will, physically block you out and prevent you from being able to see, beyond its structure. From a visual arts perspective, the wall has been described as a space of democracy for public expression, taking art out of the museums and widening the sphere of politics. In a space where basic freedom is denied to Palestinians, the wall on the Palestinian side serves as a non-discriminatory exhibition space where people of different artistic abilities are able to share a site of expression. It is when these artistic expressions enter the realm of representation or in books or photographs or discussions that a form of hierarchy or privileging is reinstated. Most, if not all, of the documentation of work that has been made on the wall itself cites and attributes specific images to specific artists. The problem with this is that most, if not all, of the artists who are named and recognized are not Palestinian and do not live in these places. So, for example, you will some of the sort of recent publications that document the wall architecture and the graffiti will reference artists like J.R. I don't know if you know about his intervention with the Mexican wall. So he's a French artist. Blue, who's another international artist, and Banksy, who's another international artist. Yet you don't find reference to local Palestinian artists who have engaged with that wall themselves. Academics analyzing the artistic interventions with the apartheid wall from a visual studies perspective have problematized the gestures of artists and activists as aiding a process of aestheticizing the wall. The wall has been described as a colonial canvas because the artwork arguably renders the wall beautiful and thus normalizes it. From this perspective, one is considered to be aiding the Israeli apartheid system in decorating and aestheticizing and therefore normalizing the wall. Israeli academic Meir Wagoda documented the wall from 2002 while it was still under construction. He argues that even attempts to photograph the apartheid barrier in order to show it to the rest of the world has a monumentalizing effect. He argues that pointing the camera at the Israeli separation barrier wall involves a fundamental paradox. No matter how critical we are of its construction, once we choose to photograph it, we are colluding with its construction and preservation. A few months after my trip with the Green Olives tour, I accompanied a British volunteer who wanted to produce a documentary about artwork on the Israeli apartheid wall. While observing the interactions between the volunteer making a documentary about art on the wall and the different players in the Bethlehem context, a number of dimensions to this discussion became apparent. I observed a particular scenario that played out between two artists from France who were adding their artwork to the wall on Bethlehem and the local inhabitants of the city in this area. The particular part of Bethlehem where Banksy's famous work can be found opposite the Banksy shop is also a civilian area. Most of the Palestinians who previously lived there have been driven out of their homes or have had their houses destroyed by the occupational warfare. But there are a few people who have remained in the area. For these people, the wall is positioned within their private spaces, just outside a bedroom window, or even running through one's garden. I found it disconcerting that the two young artists had positioned themselves here, and that one of them had removed his t-shirt while they painted the wall, as one can see in this particular image. These two artists were living in Tel Aviv and had traveled to Bethlehem for the day in order to add their contribution to the enormous wall canvas. Upon further questioning, the British volunteer was left somewhat disappointed, having discovered that the artists were not terribly well informed when it came to the politics around the wall itself, and did not really think through their choice of symbolism in relation to resistance, as you can see with this very, I think it's quite awful to be perfectly honest, the red face with the pink eyes was their part of their sort of graffiti artwork. The large red face-like imagery they had painted was apparently a trademark of their work. The artwork they added to the wall did not contain any particular symbolic resonance and had no clear connection to the Palestinian context. In addition to this, the artists appeared to be painting over an image of the Palestinian flag in order to paint their own artwork in its place. So in this image, you can see the that area, that pink area. If you look in the previous image, you can see that Palestinian flag in the corner, and as you can see in this image, it's being erased. Writing from an anthropological perspective on the topic of political tourism in the Israeli-Palestinian space, Kunstler and Papa reflect on the tensions between local populations and activists such as Banksy, and I quote, "When Banksy painted a picture on the West Bank barrier of a donkey being stopped by an Israeli soldier, within 2 weeks locals had painted over the image. Some residents had objected to the donkey as representing the Palestinians. Other graffiti works appeared to have received similar treatment. Thus, the interests and objectives of activists and their cultural productions, however innovative, cannot necessarily be taken to represent the views of Palestinians themselves. Activists, much like everybody else, express their own outlooks that may differ from those of local populations. Standing to the side, end quote. Standing to the side, observing this scenario, a Palestinian man leaned over to me and said, "Don't worry. When they are gone, we will cover it. Paint something else, like this," he said, gesturing towards his own artwork on the wall. This added another dimension to the scenario I witnessed. International artists and activists were welcome to put whatever they liked onto the apartheid wall, but the Palestinian citizens who lived with it every day would edit or paint over the things they did not like. In my discussion with Claire Anastas, whose house has been completely enclosed by the wall's path, she pointed to artworks that she liked because they reminded her of the people who had placed them there, people who had engaged openly and sensitively with her and her family. She explained that the wall is ugly, undesirable, and invasive. Nobody wants it here, but we have to live with it until it is demolished, she says. She says that in this instance, she likes the image and text selected by the artist, especially if the artist has consulted her and other individuals living in the area. In this sense, the artwork, she says, can have a positive effect. I like to look at this wall every day, and I would rather look at an artwork that I have good memories about instead of this grey concrete wall. One of the functions of a network, so this is where her house is. That's her house there, and this is the wall, which is basically, one of the only houses that's actually managed to remain in the area. So one of the functions of a network of walls and barriers is to divide and disconnect places and people from one another. Creative interventions, however subtle, resist the wall's primary purpose as a tool to divide and disconnect. Wall tourism has the ability to promote connection and visibility as a powerful form of resistance in the occupied territories. But it is important that more research is conducted within different disciplines, including visual studies, to better understand the subtle details of this phenomenon. Such research could contribute to the educating of artists, activists, and political tourists wanting to engage with the space in a meaningful way. The global increase in national border security and the construction of security walls is alarming. Creative forms of activism and artistic intervention cannot bring down walls on their own, but they can contribute to a broader project of navigating and negotiating borders and boundaries in a more sensitive and accommodating manner. I just wanted to conclude with bringing my paper home, so to speak, so bringing it back to this context. So this is why I wanted to talk about, so this artist is Enrico Chia, and I've just pronounced his name terribly, I'm sure. I intend to travel to Tijuana so that I can do a little bit of research into his work. And the other artist who I asked you to look up is Ana Teresa Fernandez, and she has done an artwork called Borrar la Frontera. And I thought, it occurred to me that this is actually quite an interesting trajectory in terms of the mural tradition in Mexico. So, of course, these are completely different kinds of murals and completely different kinds of interventions. But the idea of the wall mural is not a foreign concept within a Mexican space. And finally, I wanted to return to another paper, or to reference another paper that we heard earlier on in the conference, which I really feel speaks to the idea of connection as being a way in which we can resist domination, and the way in which we can start to move beyond the kinds of national, fascist, capitalist, colonial, however you would like to frame these borders. And so I'm going to play Tom Waits' version of Bella Ciao now for you, because I thought that might be a nice way. I'm the second person to finish, so I thought that might be a nice way to close off.
One fine morning, I woke up early. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella Bella ciao. One fine morning, I woke up early to find the fashions at my door. Oh, Partigiano, please take me with you. Bella ciao, goodbye, beautiful. Oh, Partigiano, please take me with you. I'm not afraid anymore. If I die, a partigiano, bella ciao, goodbye, beautiful. Bury me upon that mountain, beneath the shadow of the flowers. Passing, Bella ciao, goodbye, beautiful. So all the people passing, and say, oh, what a beautiful flower.
Voy a hablar en español y ella la va traduciendo. Vamos un poco atrasados y quiero que Ivonne tenga todo el tiempo que necesita para su presentación. Yo tampoco voy a dejar a Rachel sin las preguntas. Sorry, it's not working. No está funcionando. ¿Le pasan otro traductor, por favor? Gracias.
This is the flower
I would say
of the partisan. Bella ciao, bella ciao. This is the flower of the partisan.
Es el final de Sublevaciones, de la Mesa de Sublevaciones, y es como muy interesante cerrar con esta intervención acerca de los muros y el trabajo del arte para activarlos de otra manera crítica, sobre todo quizás pensando en México, donde hay un trabajo desde los años 90 muy fuerte de trabajo artístico en el muro. Si uno piensa en todo Insight como proyecto artístico, que es un proyecto, el trabajo de R, el trabajo de un montón de artistas que han estado interviniendo el muro, y también pensando con María de Fátima en la intervención de los monumentos y cómo el arte puede intervenir en este sentido para repolitizar ciertos espacios, ¿no? Y si bien está claro que esas lógicas están ahí, como hay un trabajo al interior, tanto artístico como comunitario, para poder pensar otras formas de sobrevivencia casi, ¿no? Y de estar y de habitar. Preguntas. Ahí María de Fátima, por favor. Y Daniel. Y claro, también la ponencia de Daniel que nos ayuda a pensar.
You're going to ask in English. I know you are.
Please. Hi, Rachel. I was really intrigued by the quote that you used about photographing the wall, providing it with a sort of monumentality. And it struck me that with issues like these that are so politically and racially charged, you're kind of in a catch-22, where if you don't document the wall, then perhaps people don't know about it, they can't have any sort of response to it, but if you do document it, then it's monumentalizing it. And so I wanted to know if you had any ideas about how to combat this. I know it's a problem that photographers have also faced with like photographing intense violence, or you know, Susan Sontag talks about this, the problem of photographing the pain of others.
Absolutely.
And it seems like these are related questions. So how do you, in terms of the representation that you gave, think about navigating the problem of documenting to raise awareness but not to aestheticize?
So that's a very, very challenging question. And when I was doing field work in the West Bank, I'd arrived with my traditional stock of art historical methods. So take photographs, go to archives, interview artists. And when I arrived in the context, I realized that that was definitely not going to work and wasn't a good idea. I do think that one of the things that we are facing with regards to visual representation is speed and the spectacle. So this constant consumption, we're moving through space and we are consuming images and consuming things constantly, and we're not slowing down long enough to actually think properly. So what I did is I developed a research methodology that was based on the concept of slowness and the idea of looking with the skin. And what that means is that there's another academic who talks about how you have to have skin in the game. So you have to have something at stake, and the way in which you then go about engaging with people is in a way that is sensitive. So, for example, you'll see I don't take any photographs of Palestinians. In my other work, I will document Israeli soldiers because I think they are placing themselves in a visible position of power, but I don't think that Palestinians are in a position of power. So it's impossible to stop other forms of media from happening. But that's one of the reasons why I think we have to think so carefully about this. That it isn't, you know, resistance is not as straightforward as flying to Palestine and putting your mark on the wall, taking lots of photographs and writing a blog. So, and I think that we're sitting in a situation now which is very tragic in that it has become normalized. We're looking at nearly 20 years since this wall was started being built. So I'm not sure, you know, how one goes about navigating that. I think that, in fact, that is a key question for art historians and people in visual studies at the moment. Anybody who's going about in the project of representation is exactly what Susan Sontag talks about, you know, documenting the pain of others. And you even have the dark tourism industry actually that's sort of evolved in relation to that. But yeah, like I said, I don't have the answer to that question, and there's been moments where I have wanted to refrain from taking photographs, but it's research, so yes, I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Maria.
Rachel, thank you very much. I think I really enjoyed the paper because you didn't, as Rita asked before, you didn't give us just one side of the question. It's a very complex matter, and you tried to show us different sides of the matter, the question. I have two specific questions, but very specific ones. And is any organization taking care of the painting of the wall, or you just get there with your, you know, material and you paint whatever you want at any time of the day? That's my first question. And the other one is if you somehow related with the Berlin Wall, and what do you think about this connection? Because maybe it was one of the first interventions of this kind when Berlin was divided, and what do you think about it?
So I'm just trying to remember what your first question was, but yes, okay, so the first question in relation to how the interventions are monitored.
Yes.
So
can I go there and paint the wall?
One of the problems in the West Bank in Palestine is that you have the contrast between the speed elite and people who are stuck in particular spaces. So you do have the mobile global population who can move, and Palestinians have no rights. So in occupied Palestine, you as a foreigner, as somebody, as an international individual, have more rights than a Palestinian. And so there will be ways in which communities will intervene potentially, but there is no real program. I think that at the moment it also depends on where you are at the wall. So if you're in an area that's close to Israeli soldiers and the Israeli soldiers are on the other side, then it can become a little bit tricky. And there is a Palestinian artist called XLIII, and he used to chip sections off of the wall, and now eventually it's gotten to the point. He managed to avoid, you know, getting into trouble, but it's now gotten to the point where he can't work in Palestine anymore. So in terms of those kinds of regulations, there's no regulating body, you know, that can, and that's, you know, what I'm kind of interested in. You know, it's this thing of that representation has power, and it can be both violent and it can, you know, assist in resistance, and so it's not as innocuous, you know, and as sort of innocent as merely just putting something there. So I think that the political tourism groups in Palestine would actually need some visual studies people to come on board in order to inform them in that regard, because they are coming from a tourism perspective, so they are taking care of the individual people, how they feel, for example, in the space, not necessarily the representation. And then, what was your second question? Okay. Oh, the Berlin Wall. So nationalism is the reason why these walls exist. We have, I mean, historically walls have existed for centuries, but I think the Berlin Wall is a very significant wall. And what is interesting is that you have a lot of East Berliners living in Palestine who are doing research and engaging in that space. So actually the connection is quite strong. I personally haven't gone, you know, that direction myself as yet, because I'm only sort of, you know, starting to wrap up this body of research, but I do intend to connect it to that, because I know that there were sections of the Berlin Wall, for example, that was sold off. And it was such, the fall of the Berlin Wall, I mean, it was significant globally, you know. So yes, I do think at some point I will bring it back to that.
Pues muchas gracias, porque ahora sí estamos bastante tarde, entonces vamos a finalizar aquí para que Ivonne tenga tiempo de hacer su conferencia. Gracias a todos. Cerramos aquí el panel y le damos la bienvenida a Ivonne y le pedimos al señor director que la presente. Por favor, gracias.
¿Sí? ¿Ya se escucha o no? ¿Sí se escucha? Sí. Okay. Bien, buenas tardes. Vamos a comenzar. Realmente vamos a concluir este coloquio con la conferencia magistral de Yvonne Levy, Propaganda en la era de Twitter, y voy a leer la semblanza de Yvonne y también voy a leer el resumen, que me parece importante, y quiero hacer la aclaración que se pueden hacer preguntas tanto en español como en inglés. Yvonne me ha dicho que si hablan lento, ella tiene el traductor, puede escuchar perfectamente y responder en inglés. Bueno, Yvonne Levy es profesora distinguida de arte moderno temprano en la Universidad de Toronto. Desde la finalización en 1993 de su doctorado en la Universidad de Princeton y de su primera monografía, Propaganda and the Jesuit Baroque, su investigación se ha ramificado desde Italia hacia el estudio del barroco global. Un producto de esta investigación ampliada es el Lexicon of the Hispanic Baroque, un proyecto multidisciplinario coeditado con Kenneth Mills. En los últimos 15 años, también ha trabajado intensamente en la historiografía de la historia del arte, en especial en su intersección con la política. Entre los proyectos que ha emprendido en fechas recientes se encuentra su segunda monografía, Baroque and the Political Language of Formalism, una nueva traducción al inglés de ese clásico moderno que son los principios de historia del arte de Belflin, y un volumen de próxima aparición sobre la recepción global de dichos principios. También ha trabajado teoría del arte moderno temprano y biografías, con 3 volúmenes editados sobre Bernini y en proyectos centrados en objetos. Su investigación actual sobre la condición intermedial de arte moderno temprano la llevará a México y los Andes para estudiar modos de remediación en el arte y la arquitectura coloniales. Yvonne Levy trabaja entre archivos, tanto moderno-tempranos como modernos, y un cuerpo teórico variado en un esfuerzo por revelar puntos ciegos disciplinarios y llevarnos a una relación más consciente con un cuerpo de estudios heredado. Ha recibido numerosas becas a lo largo de su trayectoria. En 2017-2018 fue profesora invitada Rudolf Bittkower en la Biblioteca Hertziana. Su investigación ha sido generosamente financiada por el Consejo de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades de Canadá. Bueno, su conferencia Propaganda en la era de Twitter. En América del Norte es solo recientemente que el término propaganda se ha utilizado con cada vez mayor apertura después de un eclipse virtual de su uso en la Guerra Fría y sus largas secuelas en las sociedades democráticas. Al igual que a principios del siglo XX, cuando el auge de los medios de comunicación provocó un aumento en la producción de propaganda, los medios digitales han generado una gran cantidad de nuevos usos de los medios con fines ideológicos. Tanto entonces como ahora, el aumento de las posibilidades de comunicación y lo directo de su uso nefasto crean una necesidad urgente por identificar y caracterizar la comunicación fake news y de propaganda. Como historiadores del arte, no podemos ignorar el papel mayor de Twitter y las redes sociales en el establecimiento de las nuevas condiciones de producción de propaganda, incluido el papel de la palabra y la imagen en ese entorno. En esta charla, sitúo los nuevos debates sobre la propaganda en el contexto histórico y analizo cómo el entorno político actual en los Estados Unidos ha caldeado museos, monumentos y obras de arte, ahora redefinidos como propaganda. Bienvenida, Yvonne.
Okay. Muchas gracias, Iván. And thank you to all of the colleagues in the organizing committee who thought to invite me to this conference. I was here for the first time 20 years ago at the invitation of Clara Bargiolini, and I'm very happy to see that this institute is bigger, more robust than it was on the foundations of its founders, and that it really is at the center of a global art history. This has been a very exciting conference. I've loved the conversations I've had, and I hope to have some with the students also, because you guys have sat through 3 days of talks, and I haven't talked to any of you. So I hope you will feel free at the end of the talk to come and talk to me. I'm interested to meet you, and we can continue after the Q&A formally. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, all right. So just one thing before I start. When I was invited to give this talk, I had been thinking about the current debates or use of the word propaganda, but what I'm presenting today is some observations about, as you will see, very contemporary things. It's not part of a big research project, but the questions about propaganda are questions that I have been thinking about for a long time. Okay, but I'm not an expert on Trump images, but I will be showing a lot. Okay. In my work on early modern Jesuit art, I was acutely aware that the negative connotations of the word propaganda were carried into the discipline of art history. When a work of art or architecture is called propaganda, the term acts as a distancing device signaling our ideological antipathy to the institution or entity that was behind the work. Because the word propaganda implies deception and manipulation, it is a hot and a fast word. Its power is seldom unleashed. There is a lot of restraint about using the word propaganda, although maybe not at this conference. It is for this reason that in a survey of Italian Baroque art, the German art historian Rudolf Wittkower could isolate Bernini's Cattedra Patri in St. Peter's in Rome as a work of noisy propaganda, but he would not isolate and call Bernini's Baldacchino or the papal tombs or anything else in the church or in the Catholic Baroque in general propaganda. If the Cattedra Patri was propaganda, the rest of the works of art could remain in the category, the much quieter category of art. Wittkower and other art historians of his generation had lived through the anxiety about propaganda in the 1920s and 1930s, when propaganda production was growing with the modern mass media. During World War II, governments warned of propaganda going undetected by the uninformed and called for the public to be careful and wary about enemy propaganda so as not to be fooled by it. In those times, it was often lamented that everything was propaganda. It was useless to try to discern what was and what wasn't propaganda, because everything was propaganda. In the face of the ubiquity of propaganda, Wittkower and others of his generation selectively parsed art's use of propaganda as an act of intellectual self-preservation. And in the process, they locked art and propaganda into a structural antithesis. Art and propaganda were absolutely antithetical. But what about us? We who dwell in a supersaturated media age, what Christian Fuchs, a communication theorist, calls the age of authoritarian capitalism. And I prefer this in a way to fascism. We are living now in another such moment of a sudden and heightened awareness of the ubiquity of propaganda, of confusion over who is producing it and why, and a rash of public calls for critical tools to detect it. Art history as a discipline has seldom gotten past the popular connotations of propaganda. It has not engaged the debates about propaganda in the social sciences, communication, and media studies. My talk aims to bring the two together in the present urgent moment in a series of reflections on a new propaganda discourse and some of its intersections with contemporary visual culture in the US, caught in the grip of Trump's Twitter feed. For scholars like myself who have tracked the history and theorization of the term propaganda in the 20th century, the very recent re-entry of the word in public discourse after decades of decline is very striking. Let me give you a little bit of context. When in 1962, the French sociologist Jacques Ellul published his book Propagande, the preeminent 20th century analysis of modern propaganda, the message of Ellul's work was not widely taken up, and it certainly did not change the popular use of the word. Why is that? Ellul had put to rest two key misunderstandings of the popular use of the word propaganda. Propaganda, he said, was not by nature deceptive. Even Hitler knew that the truth was more persuasive than lies, which can be easily disproven. Ellul also did away with the notion that informed the official US government position on propaganda. namely, that propaganda was exclusively the product of authoritarian political systems. Ellul said this was nonsense. Propaganda is a tool of authoritarian and democratic systems alike. His assessment of propaganda as a ubiquitous message-making apparatus affirmed the anxiety that it was everywhere. In the middle of the Cold War, when his book came out, this was not a message that could disrupt the popular connotations of the word propaganda, a word which, even today, is used to point to the ideological other, even in this conference. With the end of the Cold War, the propaganda question seemed to fade. Indeed, the word did not appear in the title of the next major contribution of a propaganda model. And this is just a quick analysis of the use of the word propaganda in texts in English and Spanish, which shows how the term peaked in World War II and then has gone through a steady decline. So the word propaganda did not appear in the title of the next major contribution of a propaganda model, Manufacturing Consent, the Political Economy of the Mass Media, of 1988 by the economist Ed Herman and the linguist Noam Chomsky. Their analysis took up Ellul's expanded notion of the producers of propaganda in democracy, now seeing the propaganda mechanism within the corporate framework inside of which the US media operates. Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model revealed the corporate interests that were behind the news, and the news actively supported their interest in an eternal feedback cycle. Their clear-eyed analysis showed that the news as a public good cannot be effectively provided by media in a market environment. So manufacturing consent is today being held up as an important guide to the unprecedented corporate consolidation in today's largely unregulated media environment. For example, the apotheosis of Fox News in the United States is a brazen illustration of the Chomsky propaganda model. Brazen because Trump and Fox News host Sean Hannity speak daily. Hannity has appeared at a Trump rally, and a former Trump press secretary now works at Fox. And of course, Trump's Twitter feed is in a constant feedback loop with Fox News, which he watches daily. The bald coziness of this large media organization with the US presidency, while the US White House press briefings have been shut down, is only one frightening aspect of the emerging authoritarian capitalism, this new phase of neoliberalism we are now entering. The election of Trump was facilitated by the convergence of an ethically unbound candidate and an unregulated media environment. And it is this convergence that has put propaganda once again on people's lips. For instance, just to give you a couple of examples, in 2018, a Canadian documentary film by Larry Weinstein called Propaganda, The Art of Selling Lies came out. It's an ambitious documentary in light of the Trump phenomenon. And from the policy side, just in August, the Woodrow Wilson Center, which is a Smithsonian Institute in Washington, held a conference called Decoding the Disinformation Problem, which treated propaganda extensively. The panelists in that conference agreed that while the phenomena of disinformation and propaganda are not new, the tools are new. They are faster and they are targeted. And this makes the discussion urgent now. The participants made some useful distinctions. While propaganda is a form of agitation on behalf of a cause, disinformation aims to create chaos, which leads to distrust and results in a reluctance to invest in democracy. So while propaganda does not necessarily employ the technique of disinformation, disinformation can also be propaganda. The conference and film and other examples abundantly illustrate my observation that for the first time in decades, and after decades of denial that propaganda is produced in democratic states, propaganda is now openly discussed in Western democracies, notably in the US. The reemergence of propaganda debates is truly the return of the repressed. I'm talking about propaganda today before a Congress of art historians and others. This is a very post-disciplinary conference because we are once again precisely in this condition where people are very aware of being barraged by ideologically fraught messages, text and image, and are searching for a language to describe it. With new media tools and a new context, propaganda needs another look. This time, the art world does not stand outside of it, but is inside this world. And this is the argument I propose to you today. And I want to address several structural elements of propaganda that are significantly reconfigured in today's media environment, with examples from the image worlds of Barack Obama and especially Donald Trump. Now, today's media environment can make you nostalgic for the old days when a propaganda poster was clearly identifiable as a propaganda message. And by the way, this is a reconstruction of a propaganda board. There was no confusing the messenger and the use of the medium, and it was, and in some places like North Korea today, it still is, a top-down world of message making, of identifiable institutions employing usually nameless artists to send their messages out to the world and inviting us to action. Post-war art, with its blurring of the distinction between art and life, has laid the ground for new propaganda production models, even within the art world. And I take as an example Shepard Fairey, the graphic designer and street artist who created the iconic Obama image in 2008, initially as a 4-layer screen print and digital composition. Fairey was an Obama supporter and was motivated to make an image to help the candidate, a kind of voluntary propagandist. Concerned that his previous arrests for his street art might harm Obama, he approached the campaign quietly and was given an okay. His first version used the word progress, and the campaign got more involved overtly when the image became popular, and he donated images to them with the words change and vote. When the campaign asked him to change the word to hope, this image became a semi-official one, an image made now in cooperation. Now, a poster is a traditional form of propaganda production, but he made a free download available for printing, and eventually he sold and distributed 300,000 posters to benefit the campaign. So both the distribution and payment arrangements are unconventional for conventional propaganda production. With the posters on sale by the artists, this propaganda was not passively consumed. Its power was multiplied as it became a consumer product. And because he donated the proceeds to the Obama campaign, supporters also monetarily supported the campaign through a capitalist proposition. So the capitalist art market converged with campaign propaganda. Now, MAGA hats are not the same because they are sold directly by the Trump campaign, and also, in my opinion, they are ugly. Just wanted to see if you were paying attention. I think you are. From an outsider, Ferry became, in his own words, someone who has infiltrated the system. He thematized this shift in his own activity from a street artist to working directly with a political campaign in a book he called Covert to Overt. He's an emblematic figure for the media environment because his work did not come from inside and because it could be disseminated digitally. There's no question that his Obama poster is an example of a new model of propaganda. Now, he's quite aware of the negative connotations of propaganda, and he embraces the word, eager to be transparent about his constructive agenda. Again, indicating this kind of traditional us versus them view of propaganda in the United States. But let's see what happens to his propaganda authorship when a museum gets involved. A fine art version of the poster was produced after the poster went viral. It was made on commission to fund more posters. Eventually, Ferry Shepherd made 3 of these fine art versions, one of which was donated to the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, and it was unveiled on Inauguration Weekend as a version of the iconic poster. In the publicity, the work was connected to its remediations that had a wide impact, but they called it an original artwork. The curators are eager to point out the subtle use of color, the hints of gold, and the collage surface that made this work a one-of-a-kind. It has been called by the curators at the National Portrait Gallery a work of positive propaganda, because it's art, right? So they're trying to negotiate this art propaganda antithesis because they got something that they needed to negotiate. So this very conservative institution very carefully respected the old art propaganda dialectic in collecting the work and presenting it as a legitimate fine art version. Now, Ferry's poster image is, in my opinion, the much more important image. It was only after the success of the image, once its propaganda value was established, that there was demand for a fine art image. Obama himself, prince that he is, recognized the indifference of context when he wrote in a letter of thanks to the artist, quote, "I would like to thank you for using your talent in support of my campaign. The political messages involved in your work have encouraged Americans to believe they can help change the status quo. Your images have a profound effect on people, whether seen in a gallery or on a stop sign." When Shepard Fairey met Barack Obama, Obama asked, "How did you get the image to spread so quickly?" This was the digital version of shock propaganda that was made and circulated in just a matter of a day. With the internet as a tool, he created a downloadable design and helped it appear on t-shirts, posters, mugs, walls, everywhere. Obama was referring to the image's virality. As has been argued by media theorists, while the viral image is not new, the speed, diffusion, and frequency of viral events are new. The viral electronic message and electronic image today tap into the same anxiety about mass contagion that drove the first psychologically oriented analyses of crowd behavior in the late 19th century. A major reason that people are talking again about propaganda and disinformation now is that these bottom-up, shared, viral images look like frightening ideological contagions. The dissemination of conspiracy theories with no basis in fact or reality once again are raising fears about the susceptibility of crowds to irrational behavior. The emergence of bots, however, flip the equation. Bottom-up virality, a product of shared images, for instance, with bots might turn out to be a product of top-down or bot-down code writing. Both sources of viral images, bottom-up and bot-down, amplify the anxiety around these electronic contagions. Now the irrational crowd is being swayed potentially by a motivated actor, a motivated hidden actor, potentially a bad actor. Now not only is the crowd unsure where its messages are coming from, but the crowd itself is a fiction. Bots can create imaginary accounts. They can create imaginary citizens. Up to 50% of Trump's own 64 million Twitter followers are estimated to be bots. Think about it. Today's social media platforms have nonetheless toppled the top-down model profoundly, providing an alternative participatory model. I don't need to tell you that the speed of dissemination of electronic media has worked for the good and the bad. We've seen the heady days of the Arab Spring when Facebook was a positive tool of organizing of fledgling democratic rebellions. And now we have seen the interference in the 2016 US presidential election of Russia and the use of bots to amplify and mask the origins of Russian interference. Outside parties and special interests can invisibly take matters into their own hands. No matter their ideological position, both human and electronic multipliers have transformed the profile of propaganda producers. And here's my observation. It's no longer accurate to speak of propaganda as for the masses. Propaganda is produced by the masses. Let us not underestimate our own agency in forwarding tweets and posts on Facebook. We are all potentially propaganda producers. Christian Fuchs, in a book called Digital Demagogue, generated an interesting word cloud of Trump's tweets in the year before he was elected. I'm sorry, I don't have an image. But one of the interesting things is that one of the really big words was HTTP, which shows the extent to which he was a kind of intermediary and forwarding other people's messages. So Fuchs very intelligently pointed out that even Trump's tweets are really highly intertextual in this world. He's trafficking in other people's tweets. Now I want to finish my remarks on participatory propaganda with a comparison of how this incredible citizenry of propagandists is visualized by politicians using some current examples. So first, an example of the top-down model. Trump, who talks to his followers, to his base, most often, you could say that of all the US politicians, he's the most connected to and dependent on this community. And it's not an imagined community. For him, it's a materialized one. He goes and is in midst of them. He's really constituted by his presence in that community. The more people that attend his rallies, the happier, the more full of life he is. He boasts about the numbers continually. So it's not surprising that the photo on top of his Twitter account is an image of himself speaking to the masses at a rally, an image dear to autocratic rulers. So by contrast, the Democratic candidate for President Elizabeth Warren, her Twitter has an image of participatory democracy. What is more, she is building a photographic coalition with the masses, a photo archive of mass individualism. She has taken to over 60,000 individual photographs of her posed with individuals or small groups. She takes like 30 seconds with each person, and then they send these images out. She takes them at her rallies. She announces that she will stay as long as they will, and she has stayed as long as 4 hours after a rally to take a picture with each individual. So you can imagine how these images also fly around the media. They are better than yard signs and also better than bots. A picture used to be worth 1,000 words. I think now it's worth 1,000 likes or maybe 1 million retweets. Images circulating on social media as bottom-up propaganda is the good news story. But fake news is also with us. There is nothing new about fake news. As Christian Fuchs again has argued, it's just a new name for tabloid culture. What is new is that it can be generated, compressed, and circulated quickly. Again, the tools are why we're talking about this. People have warned that Trump cannot simply be reduced to this explanation, though, but he is a threat in an unregulated environment governed only by profit imperatives. And fake news also concerns images. For instance, Trump's administration began the very first day with a presidential temper tantrum about a comparison between two images. I love this. Art historians have not used this enough. The comparison was the two photos showing the crowd at his and Obama's first inauguration, and the comparison was sent out by the National Park Services. Trump then demanded photos from the Park Services that would prove his contention that the crowd at his inauguration was larger. As art historians, we know that before the camera and drone, a painter would have simply interpreted the event to fit the needs of the regime. Jacques-Louis David's coronation scene, eyewitnessed by the artist, was nonetheless a fanciful rendering of what occurred and who was present. The tweeted out photo comparison, which is possible in a democratic open media environment, got in the way of Trump's fairy tale. And this is what created the conflict. So Trump's first authoritarian act in office was to change reality. The first official overthrow of the conventional rational tools and their substitution with the Trumpian hermeneutic was around a photo comparison. Trump's version was made official when he demanded that his press secretary, Sean Spicy, proclaim Trump's perception to be correct, using the pulpit of the White House to spread disinformation. After this warning that the government's reliance on evidence was under siege, the Washington Post conducted a poll of voters to see if Trump voters would follow his interpretation of the visual evidence. A disturbingly high number of people were susceptible to Trump's view, willing to look past the evidence before their eyes. It is one thing to declare one's own interpretation to be correct when verifiable facts are available, but the next frontier of image manipulation is synthetic images. The digitally generated deep fakes that amalgamate image and voice data to put words in our mouths. A well-known example of this featuring Obama was circulated last year, and CNN has mounted a website, which you see here, explaining deep fakes and why we should be worried. In the recent panel on disinformation that I mentioned before, scholars assessed the upcoming threat of animated images that can convincingly put words in the mouths of leaders as the next frontier of the disinformation wars. Deep fakes, the undermining of science and objective truth. Our post-fact world is a dangerous cocktail of technology and conspiracy, the perfect propaganda environment. In this viral, unregulated environment in which evidence-based thinking has been eroded, it is obvious what kind of dangers these images can pose. Words and images create the appearance of reality. The next step is an evasion of justice, wrongful entry into conflict, the undermining of justice. So the term propaganda, and especially its popular connotations of deception, is back because we really need it. Now this is a lighter part. There's also something interesting going on with the images of Trump's presidency in the age of Twitter. And yet, after the visual turn, with so many media tools available for the dissemination of images, I have been fascinated that Trump's presidency, Trump, who is so concerned with his own image, hasn't really congealed into a set of iconic images. Think about it. You tell me later if you think there are some iconic images. Like even a picture with Kim Jong-un at a historic meeting on the dramatic border of North and South Korea, the kind of image catching the perfect moment that sums up a lot of words and a lot of moments, that compresses the significance of an event into a single shot, is not so valuable with Trump. Perhaps because video has overtaken the still in Trump, or because the fear was that the whole point of the meeting was the photo op, and so if the meeting had no substance, no photo could quite capture it. Trump's overriding self-interest makes every change of scenery kind of meaningless. And there are no photos that catch the president in private moments behind official duties. He sits in the same way. He walks at the same pace. He never runs. He wears the same clothes. He dresses like the American flag. He eats the same meal. He golfs at the same time in the same outfit on Saturday and Sunday at the same time. He has 4 moods. There are only 3 here. He's the seductive salesman. He's bored and subdued. He's aggressive and attacking, or he plays the gracious host. I've never seen him laugh or cry or be genuinely emotional. I can't think of a photo that reveals something we don't already know about him. Now, I recognize that there are Trump supporters for whom there may well be meaningful images, but take a look at his Instagram and the White House Flickr feed, where the official photographer posts her photos. No private photos, by the way. And you'll see what I mean. Now, in the end, Trump doesn't really want us to see him so much as to hear him, and this is why he puts his crowds on top of his Twitter feed. So many people who have come to listen. And Trump understands Twitter as his 24/7 bullhorn, his daily arena. To tweet is to exist. Even writing is too quiet for Trump. He theatricalizes his bill signing events. I checked, Obama never lifted up the bill. He always just signed it. His signature has grown so large so that we can see clearly that he has exercised his authority, which otherwise would lie so silently on the page. We are now all keenly aware that Twitter is not just a tool amongst tools. It's actively shaping global politics. He uses his Twitter to fire people, conduct foreign policy, intimidate political rivals. His words have shaken global markets and brought him into legal peril. It is metabolic for Trump to dominate through speech acts, and the president's words initiate acts. Pictures much less so. In matters of state, words are more important than images. You cannot enact a law or give a congressional address with a picture. Although my blood pressure would be better if you just put a picture up and, okay. And just as in the Reformation, when images came down and the word of God became central, Trump's Twitter has also become an image. The most elaborate commentary on the imaging of Trump's word is a mock exhibition, the Donald J. Trump Presidential Twitter Library, organized in 2017 by Trevor Noah's Daily Show, which is a nightly entertainment show which delivers an acute running commentary on the news from the perspective of the left. The Presidential Twitter Library is a cross between an art exhibition and a library exhibition but it draws heavily on the language and installation conventions of art museums. The entrance to the New York venue of the exhibition is a newly commissioned sculpture, which looks a lot like a medieval reliquary, with a pair of tiny hands emerging from suit-clad arms, clutching an oversized phone. Guided by the chief curator, the exhibition calls attention to master works of the Twitter feed. It attacks the early years of Trump's tweets. It thematizes great battles. It creates caricatures for all of his nicknames and other things. I recommend it. It's all online. You can go in and see all of it. Now, the cover image of the book that the organizers published for it, which you can all buy in ebook form, is an art historical satire of a well-known 19th century painting of Washington crossing the Delaware by a German artist. Now, purportedly, this satirical painting was painted by Trump himself, and it features Trump in Washington's place surrounded by his enablers. According to the catalog, modern X-ray analysis has revealed that an earlier version of the work showed Vladimir Putin in the water, shirtless and single-handedly tugging the boat wherever he wants it to go. But this was later covered up. And in other parts of the exhibition, viewers are invited to participate by sitting on a golden commode in a presidential blue robe and to watch the news coming in and to sort of relive the composition of one of the great tweets. Now, the gold toilet is a reference to Maurizio Catalan's golden toilet installed in the Guggenheim in New York, for which Catalan came out of retirement, and people lined up for hours to use the facilities. All right, back to serious matters. Now, this exhibition is hilarious, and cathartic as humor can be in difficult times. But it is arguably a work of realism rather than satire. What I want to say about it is that it recognizes the hegemony of the word in the age of Twitter, and it spectacularizes it in the age of Trump. But the exhibition, which classifies and frames, actually tames the tweets. It's a coping mechanism. See, don't you all feel a little better after that? A way of putting some distance between us and Trump's bellowing voice. This exhibition, like memes, which are our contemporary caricatures, is comforting, but it's not what we need. The serious kernel of the Presidential Twitter Library exhibition is the movement of a kind of counter-propaganda to Trump into an exhibition and museological context. But precisely because the recontextualization was the parodic kernel, it worked in the wrong direction. The exhibition played on the traditional distinction between propaganda and art, playfully elevating the tweets, but also in the process defanging them, taking the poison out of it. To take Trump's propaganda off of the messy battleground, to enclose it in the temple of art, elevated off of the street in a world of hushed tones, inviting contemplation, is to diffuse the power. It's the opposite of what the Nazi regime accomplished with the degenerate art exhibition that traveled around Germany in 1938. In their attempt to discredit modern art, the Nazis distinguished the exhibition from a fine art exhibition by painting slogans on the wall and installing the works in a crowded, carnivalesque atmosphere. The degenerate art exhibits were not held in museums. From World War I and through the Cold War, propaganda and truth, or information an unvarnished message were firmly locked in an enduring opposition. The Twitter library preserves the opposition. Some solutions. For the Dutch propaganda artist Jonas Staal, Trump and his Twitter is no laughing matter. The left will only effectively fight back when it embraces the tools of the right. This art propaganda antithesis must be broken down because the alt-right is a cultural movement, and until its use of art in its propaganda is understood, the left will not effectively develop the tools to counter it. In 2018, this self-defined propaganda artist organized a retrospective of the cultural and political work of Steve Bannon, one of Trump's most important ideologues. Held at Rotterdam's Het Nieuwe Institute, which was in the last slide, a state institution whose programming is dedicated to architecture, urbanism, design, and digital media, the Institute has been in the vanguard in exhibitions of new media, including algorithmic culture and bots. The Bannon exhibition, an unveiling of the visual and ideological architecture of the alt-right, surveyed Bannon's media and political work as a unity and showed the body of work that preceded his work for Trump. This included work in gaming and 9 documentary films. So the exhibition treated Bannon as an auteur, and it is owing to Stahl's unique perspective on propaganda arts that Bannon is treated as a propaganda artist. Stahl's contention is that the alt-right is not just a political movement, but a cultural movement that dwells in our media. If all of this brings to mind Hitler's self-fashioning as an artist of politics, you are right. Stahl means to get our attention about the perils of this moment. And he's a crucial figure for calling out the unacknowledged imbrication often of culture and politics. Stahl's argument is based on the deep-rooted relationship between the art institution and politics, a relationship that can go unacknowledged by both parties. The art institution refuses to question its supposed autonomy and to consider the way it functions from the perspective of socio-economic interests. Conversely, politics refuses to give up its untenably neutral position with respect to the arts. Politics persists in the ideal of a free and independent art, in spite of its far-reaching and direct interference in funding and content. In doing so, politics denies its direct responsibility and power as the actual commissioning client of the art institution. So Stahl calls for the museum to become a space for propaganda. And I know that this is a variant on what a lot of you have been talking about in this conference, but I think it's the baldest, most direct version of a lot of things that you've been talking about. And this is already happening. In the catalog for the Bannon exhibit, Art in the Museum, the curator, Maria Verzieri-Otter, addresses the activist role that Stahl expects the museum to take, noting the pressure on the mechanisms inherent to museological spaces and their ability to address pressing societal questions. And she takes the opportunity to affirm Het Nieuwe Institute's position that cultural spaces have to take part in this conversation about the alt-right. But the exhibition is more than a conversation. It's a call to action. And this doesn't mean a dismantling of propaganda, but a clear-eyed analysis of it, and this is the important thing, the production of what Stahl calls an emancipatory propaganda to counter the alt-right. Facts alone will not fend off the Trumpian reality. A counter-propaganda, and I don't even like counter-propaganda, I think an equivalent propaganda from the left, must create an equally persuasive propaganda narrative. An alternative reality picture must be made. The moment to make propaganda noise in the hushed white box of the museum has arrived on both sides of the political divide. Let's consider the 2019 retrospective of the well-known leftist artist Jenny Holzer at the Guggenheim in Bilbao, which showed many of her text-based works, some monumentalized, some spatialized and kinetic. Now, Holzer has been making what Jonas Stahl would consider propaganda art since the 1970s, but the frame has not caught up with her. The art propaganda antithesis kept the propaganda function of the work masked, contained in the box that allowed museums to profit from the maintenance of their own autonomy, skirting their own political and economic interests. But it's symptomatic of this moment that Holzer's exhibition this summer was denounced as left-wing propaganda in not a review, but an opinion piece in the Washington Post by a well-known right-wing political commentator, a real T-wing, bad guy. Now, Thiessen objected to the exhibition in these terms. He said, "It's no surprise that the art world is left-wing, but the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, an institution owned by an American foundation in the heart of Spain, has turned itself into something worse, an instrument of anti-American propaganda. The museum is spreading calumnies against the men and women of the US military and fueling hatred of America in a foreign land," end quote. Now, there's a lot that is factually wrong about this statement, but let me extract a couple of things. The key point, and what initially surprised me, is that he sees the exhibition as propaganda, not as a politically left-leaning exhibition, not as a political statement, a provocation, but as propaganda in which the museum was complicit. And he singled out Holzer's room of manifestos, a series of written rants that she put up around New York City, street art that was brought inside the museum and then translated into 3 languages. And the reviewer quoted the Guggenheim's description of these works, which, quote, "consider the necessity of social change, propaganda's potential to manipulate the public, and the conditions that attend revolution," end quote. Now, the reviewer was angry that an American museum would advance anti-American propaganda, but the reviewer was not fooled by Frank Gehry's curvy building. He understood that the work was propaganda work. Jonas Stahl would be very pleased. So this review in the end isn't silly or wrong, as other reviewers have tried to argue. A lot of people have commented on it that this guy is an idiot. He's actually right. At last, the museum is being recognized as the political space that it is and needs to be. Here's another example, and I am almost done. At the Museum of Broken Windows, a pop-up exhibition which is being staged in New York City this month, the curtain falls again. On the website for the event, we read, quote, "The exhibition asks what the toll of broken windows policing has been on Black and brown New Yorkers, and invites people to reflect on why the outdated policing strategy belongs in a museum rather than on our streets," end quote. Now this is the interesting part. The sponsors of the exhibition of drawings, paintings, installations is not any kind of art organization. There doesn't seem to be any art curator. It is the New York Civil Liberties Union that organized the exhibition. And the title comes from the theory about the contagion of disorder in poor neighborhoods proposed by 2 social scientists in 1982. The curators of the Civil Liberties Union make the point that in the US public policy, a decision was made to police rather than to repair. Instead of fixing broken windows, they arrested the people who broke them and contributed this way to the contagion rather than stopping the contagion. Although some of the exhibition publicity speaks of the exhibition as a time to reflect, the advocacy director of the Civil Liberties Union calls the exhibition a call to action. And the New York City police car filled with plants is a moving call to halt the policing, to fix broken authority by benevolently embedding it in a new garden. There is some resonance here, I think, with the Skin of Memory project. These exhibitions use emancipatory reason rather than instrumental rationality. And the bold program of these exhibitions is not a voice in the wilderness. Just weeks ago, ICOM, the International Museum Organization, issued a proposal for a revised definition of the museum that will be voted on in their meeting in October in Tokyo. The current definition stresses preservation and interpretation of artifacts. The proposed definition, which you see here, alludes to a bolder role for the museum and a clear orientation to the left, using terms like democratizing, inclusive, critical dialogue, equal rights, participatory, transparent, human dignity, social justice, and planetary well-being. I'm particularly happy about the planetary well-being. While Jonas Stahl remains alone in advocating propaganda art by name, the spirit of his program and its orientation to the left and its directness in addressing conflict and its participatory goals are aligned with what the direction of ECOM right now. As I was writing this paper, and I'm concluding here, one of our contemporary art galleries at the University of Toronto was holding a banner-making workshop organized by the artists collective called Just Seeds. Dr. Camacho Becerra's lecture this morning about Rinnie Templeton really resonated with this project. The workshop was part of a 2-year program, contemporary art program on climate. And the workshop was organized around the climate action marches. Watching Just Seeds work with students to produce signs and t-shirts to send them off to the march was a clear instance of Jonas Stahl's call to action. But to put it in the terms of this conference, this is not resistance, not counter-propaganda. The left must make its own propaganda. So as many of us made signs and took to the streets last Friday, I thought, welcome to the museum. Let's make some noise. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Yvonne, por esta sugerente conferencia magistral de cierre. Bueno, me parece muy interesante cerrar con esta reflexión de Yvonne, precisamente porque algo que subyace se ha discutido acá y hace rato hubo una sesión de reflexión sobre justamente el sentido de las lógicas de dominación y resistencia, pero me parece que todas las temáticas de los coloquios implícitamente llevan un tema muy contundente, que es pensar qué se está haciendo en la disciplina y qué es la disciplina, es decir, qué es la historia del arte y cómo se vincula con diferentes disciplinas, no solo con la historia, la estética, la política, las leyes, en fin. Y creo que algo que remarca Yvonne en su conferencia, justamente como historiadores del arte, estamos familiarizados, por lo menos en los estudios de arte moderno y contemporáneo, entender las obras de arte como propaganda durante la Guerra Fría, pero no así esta perspectiva que nos abre básicamente con los medios y con las redes sociales, ¿no? La propaganda reaparece o supervive en las redes sociales. Entonces, también creo que es muy sintomático que todos los trabajos que se han presentado aquí parten de horizontes teóricos diversos, de enfoques metodológicos y de apuestas por objetos de estudio diversos, lo cual refleja también un estado de la disciplina, que es lo que este coloquio quiere hacer. Entonces, hay un tiempo para preguntas, nos hemos alargado demasiado, sé que estamos muy cansados ya, pero me parece que la intervención de Yvonne es propicia para una serie de preguntas. Entonces, no sé quién quiera comenzar. Renato.
quizás pudieras abundar un poco, hablar un poco más sobre lo que dijiste, que realmente Trump es un político que no tiene una imagen icónica y en el que el texto prevalece o la palabra prevalece sobre la imagen. Creo que tiene unas implicaciones muy amplias.
Yeah, no, I have an archive of Trump's utterances in my brain from the last 3 years. I have an archive of what he has said, but I don't have an archive of images. So he's a kind of temporal figure. I mean, I gave you a couple of my ideas that he doesn't sort of crystallize in an image, and I think that part of the problem is that we recognize him as a kind of empty figure. And so the photograph is not, you know, his actions are only meaningful in a very kind of destructive way. So the official photographs, which are what you mostly get, are very empty. And anyway, those just, I'm curious to hear if anyone else has thought about this. The only image for me that is really iconic about Trump is the balloon, which keeps reappearing in the protests. Like, that's a kind of constant in a way about him, but yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have more to say about that.
Rita y Rose después. Y Lucero.
Bueno, gracias por la ponencia realmente magistral. Quería preguntarte si hay un debate en la prensa que me confundió muchísimo. El Washington Post se supone que es la última esperanza de la prensa progresista. ¿Por qué? Bueno, porque ahora hasta el New York Times está en discusión si es un periódico progresista o no. Al menos esa es la información que yo tengo. Entonces, ¿cómo es posible que hayan aceptado este reporte sobre Jenny Holzer y lo que pasó en Bilbao Guggenheim? ¿Cómo explicar eso? ¿Qué pasa con la prensa? Que también la prensa que era abierta está tomando este sesgo. Porque alguien que dirige el periódico podría no haber aceptado este tipo de situación.
Well, it was an opinion piece, and opinion pieces range more widely than a review might. So that's, I mean, just about the question of the reliability of the media, let's not confuse the media with journalism. And there, you know, our hopes do still reside in the journalists who are doing the hard work of finding out what's actually going on. But I don't know if I understood your question correctly. If the question is, why did the Washington Post publish this article? Well, I mean, I'm really glad that they published this article because I think he's right. That's my message. He's right. He is unveiling something. You may not like the message, but he's absolutely right. He's just saying, look, there's this distance doesn't exist. He tore it down for us. He did that work for us. I wouldn't have gotten there myself if he hadn't done it. And my thoughts about that article really changed over the course of writing this paper. Initially, I had your reaction, like, oh my God, what an idiot, right? And then I thought, no, it's right.
Rose?
Thank you. Thanks so much for a wonderful lecture. I was really interested to hear you talk, I mean, moving a little bit away just from Trump's own aesthetics to this idea you were talking about in relation to the Jonas-style exhibition of the alt-right as a cultural organization. Because, you know, I kind of, that must be true, right? But I've spent lots of time trying to work out, like, what is the aesthetic of the alt-right? And, you know, so there's this haircut, you know the haircut, it's called a fade, apparently. I looked it up with, like, it's like a short back and side, but a bit higher. And it's like, you know, so it's kind of very so there's that. But then I can't find, I haven't been able to find, which doesn't remotely mean it's not there, but apart from the memes, which are like super, super lo-fi interventions, and then these really kind of high-tech mock-ups of what the future could be like if we could just get rid of all the black and brown people, you know, that kind of thing, like these kind of terrifying. Yeah. So I wondered if you could say something more about.
This is Jonas Stahl's work, and he's done a kind of deep analysis of the themes. He knows what Bannon's ideological underpinnings are and what he reads. So on the one hand, there's a kind of deep dive into some iconographic themes which are informed by political thought. And on the other hand, so it's not a look, it's a series of themes, but it's also the platforms, which are largely digital and documentary. So.
Lucero.
Gracias, Ebon, estuvo muy inspiradora tu plática. Una pregunta, es una reflexión y es una pregunta un poco mañosa, pero bueno. Entre el discurso del tweet, que es inmediato, profundamente individualista, que hace que reacciones totalmente arroceramente, como decían hoy, que te incendia, te corrige el tweet, versus el museo, que es como el panteón de la antigüedad, donde casi todo lo que está expuesto está descontextualizado, ¿sí? En donde las cosas que están exhibidas en un museo están fuera de su contexto. How do you feel that gap? I mean, it's a very stupid question.
How did the tweets end up in this new context of the museum? Is that the question?
Yes, how can we feel? ¿Cómo podemos usar Twitter para poder acercar al gran público al museo y viceversa? Si eso es posible.
It is the biggest legacy of Trump, right? The man doesn't write. He once tore up a piece of paper that was on his desk and ate it. There will be no written legacy. There will be a Twitter legacy. And they're absolutely right that these things have become, and what I like about it is that, and I made a reference to the Reformation, because in Reformation churches, the Word of God, the book, becomes an image, right? Like, you know, pull down all the altarpieces, and in their place, you put an image of the book. This is what effectively they're doing. They're recognizing that this is his cultural output, and there is this intense desire to constantly not just read, but visualize the tweets. Like on the nightly news is one slide after another of tweets, which become also visual things. So they are his main creative product, right? Yeah, that's why. I think that they're his statesmanship and his creativity as well. Like it or not. Sometimes he's funny, sometimes.
Luis Adrián.
Yo sé que no es el foco, no fue el foco de tu charla, pero me pregunto si has pensado cómo esta propaganda que se materializa con Trump usa estas figuraciones de lenguaje o creaciones de imágenes para apuntalar cosas, y hablo en concreto del lugar que ha tenido México, el inmigrante ilegal, el muro y otras tantas imágenes que son convocadas comúnmente con Trump. Es decir, más allá de, entiendo que analizaste las imágenes de Trump, pero dentro de su lenguaje siempre apareció desde el principio México como otro que afirmaba cierta excepcionalidad americana y que ayudaba a generar esta idea de la América profunda y let's make America great again. Entonces,
I'm sorry, I have to ask you to to do it in English.
Yeah. So I know that this is not the point of your talk, but I was thinking if you have considered how Mexico as a sort of image embedded in the idea of a wall or an illegal immigrant plays out in the generation of Trump's propaganda, because I think it reinforced American exceptionalism in a way that has been historically built. Let's say American is exceptional in the world because it's so different from its neighbor in the South.
Yeah, my first thought on this talk was actually to try to work with images of the wall, but I decided to go in a different direction. But yes, totally. Yeah, sad.
¿Hay algo? Sí, Dan.
Creo que fue muy interesante pasar de el póster y el lugar, digamos, de el diseño y el arte al servicio de la propaganda, de alguna manera, a ir identificando estos procesos de remediación, en donde me llama la atención a mí que el medio privilegiado sea la luz.
La luz.
La luz. Las pantallas lumínicas, de ese tránsito de la pantalla lumínica a la proyección sobre el museo, que es usado como pantalla. Pensaba yo en el trabajo de Illuminators, este grupo de activistas que han estado trabajando también con estos procesos de luz.
It's a good example.
Y creo que en el momento en el que dices la propaganda no es producida para las masas, sino por las masas, hay algo que tiene que ver también con la posibilidad que da este medio intangible que es la luz, que de alguna manera todos tenemos acceso ahora. Quiero decir, no implica esta mano diestra.
You're like a Baroque emblem generator.
Sí, quiero saber qué piensas sobre esta remediación, pero en particular me llama la atención que el museo de Twitter no sean pantallas, sino sea una captura de pantalla. Screen. The museum is not the light, but is the materiality of the paper. That is the screenshot. So I don't know why that museum is not a screen light, but a mark with the paper.
I don't think I can follow. Maybe we talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Sorry.
Elsa.
La pregunta que tengo es, no específicamente, o más bien fuera un poco de lo que mencionaste, pero me hiciste pensar muchísimo en la efectividad del relato del cambio climático como antipropaganda en el discurso actual de Trump. Es fuera, pero me parece interesante.
Disinformation. Yeah. That disinformation. Yeah. That's true. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your question.
Ok, bueno, ya no les voy a quitar mucho más tiempo, pero quiero dar una información y hacer un pequeño acto de agradecimiento. Me gustaría que pasaran al frente. Este coloquio ha sido posible gracias a la intervención y participación de muchas personas, tanto de la Secretaría de Cultura de Jalisco como del Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas. Pero en particular hay 4 personas que trabajaron de manera intensiva, horas extra, para que todo esto fuera posible. Me gustaría que le diéramos un aplauso, me gustaría que pasaran al frente a Araceli Rodríguez, quien es secretaria técnica. Beatriz Adriana Díaz, quien es asistente de la Secretaría Técnica. Bueno, Zach Nicte, que no está aquí, que es de la Secretaría de Cultura de Jalisco, pero le ofrecemos un aplauso. Y finalmente Ángel Landeros, de la Secretaría de Cultura de Jalisco. Bien, muchísimas gracias por todo su apoyo, por sonreírnos todos los días frente a las adversidades y peligros e inminencias negativas que finalmente pudimos saldar. Gracias. Bueno, y la última información es que ya está listo, está en preparación ya nuestro 44 Coloquio Internacional de Historia del Arte, que se llevará a cabo del 6 al 9 de octubre de 2020 en Sede aún por definir, pero que ya tiene una temática definida, que es imagen, tecnología y materialidad, y ya está compuesto su comité científico, integrado como en esta ocasión, tanto por jóvenes investigadores como por experimentados especialistas en una de las líneas de investigación actuales de estudios sobre la materialidad del Instituto de Investigaciones Estéticas. Entonces, la convocatoria será pública hacia finales de enero, así que esperamos que la puedan compartir cuando se las enviemos. Muchísimas gracias a todos y buen viaje a los que tengan que volver, buena estancia a los que se quedan aquí. Gracias. Sí, y un agradecimiento, es cierto, a los traductores también que hicieron posible esta mediación.